today I'm going to play Pokemon Yellow using only Ditto, and this cute little blob really surprised me. If we look at the tier list right now, Abra has a time of 4 hours and 2 minutes, and I think it's pretty obvious that Ditto is going to be a far worse Pokemon than Abra. And I do think that all of us know that Ditto can beat the game. If you haven't seen Picaspray's video about Ditto, which came out ages ago, I am going to spoil the eventual conclusion of that video, which is he was able to beat the game with Ditto. Although some weird glitches happened along the way, like Ditto forgetting to use Struggle, and I will be covering that in depth during this video. My primary purpose here is to show you information that you don't already know about Ditto. I want to get a more precise answer for the question of how fast can Ditto beat the game, although we will still have some margin of error. I'm not a perfect player and I'm not going to be able to get a perfect run. Second, I also want to answer the question of what are the optimal strategies at each point of the game for Ditto to achieve maximum speed. And thirdly, I want to see just how far behind Abra Ditto comes when everything finally shakes out. And with Ditto completed, there is only going to be one Pokemon that I have yet to rank in my tier list. It's Mewtwo, the grand finale of Pokemon Yellow, which I will be taking care of on December 24th. But before that, we need to spend a lot of time talking about this pink blob. There is so much complexity in this run. And by the way, I have already made a critical mistake in this playthrough, but I am woefully unaware of it. In the early game, I wanted to make sure that I was gaining as much experience as was possible. Transforming into Eevee and defeating the rival's Pokemon is the best way to do this. This gets Ditto to level 6 before it heads out onto Route 1. If I want to train in this section of the game, I'm going to need to use Transform since I have 10 PP of the move. I'll have to spam out all of these before I can get access to Struggle. So let's do a brief refresher of how Transform works in Generation 1. It bypasses accuracy checks, so it is not affected by the Generation 1 miss glitch. That only occurs when the accuracy calculation runs. There's also this hilarious chart on Bulbapedia showing you when Transform can execute. In Generation 1, it still works when the target is semi-invulnerable, meaning it's using Fly or Dig. It also works in Generation 1 when the target is transformed, and I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but this is actually very relevant for today's playthrough. It works if the user is already transformed. This will also be relevant, and I can't believe it, but the target can actually be behind a substitute because Agatha has a Gengar that knows substitute. Okay, here's another transform chart showing you all of the traits that are copied by the move. In Generation 1, this is species, appearance, types, attack, defense, special, and speed, stage modifiers, moves, and it does say height and weight, but those parameters aren't used for anything during battle. I don't even know if they are effectively copied. One other thing that I want to emphasize here that is copied is the Pokemon species. This brings along with it the critical hit rate, because in Generation 1, crit rate is determined based on the species speed stat. This is very important for Ditto in so many scenarios throughout this run. If I am transforming into, say, a Geodude, my crit rate is going to go way down, but if I transform into an Electrode, my crit rate is going to go way up. I have fixed up this overlay so that it shows a lot of things for Ditto that it hasn't before with other Pokemon. For example, when I run out of Transform PP, it is going to correctly show that Struggle is a normal type move and calculate in the type effectiveness. I'm also going to be displaying the type of the Pokemon that I transform into, but I'm not going to be displaying that Pokemon's species in the place of Ditto. It just looked really ugly having to rescale all of the graphics, and I would have had to do each one by hand, which would have wasted way too much time. It just wasn't worth it. I am also displaying splits on the right hand side of the screen because we just need to put something in that area of the screen. Otherwise, there would be a giant white box there where the move pool should have been. I also think it's important to keep track of my splits here because this run's going to take a long time. I need encouragement that I am at least making progress. And speaking of progress, let's talk about ways to train in the early game. Right away, I had to figure out where it was best for Ditto to grind. If I use Transform and I go down to Struggle, I will be able to knock out wild Pokemon more efficiently. But the problem with that is there are a limited number of potions in the early game. Once I run out of potions, then I'm on my own. I have to spam out Transform, heal in the center when my health gets low, and that's going to be really inconvenient. Instead, in Viridian Forest, I can go up against Bugcatcher 2. He has 3 Pokemon, 2 Metapod and 1 Caterpie in the middle. He is essentially the Caterpie sandwich, which sounds like a truly horrific sandwich. I don't recommend eating this. But for Ditto, I am going to eat up all of the experience here. I can transform into Metapod, use up Harden, and then use Struggle to knock out the first Metapod, which can never attack. In Generation 1, enemy Pokemon do not have PP, so it can't even use struggle. That's another factor about transform that you need to understand. Whenever a Pokemon uses it, the copied moves that it gets only have 5 PP each, which is really frustrating for a bunch of different reasons. In this case, it's really frustrating because I have to use 5 turns, just wasting time, before I finally slowly knock out the Metapod. The experience from this middle evolution is pretty good, and it gives me enough to level up to 7 before the Caterpie comes in. This Pokemon knows Tackle, and I'm not able to defeat it, but then I can just repeat this process over and over again, defeating the one Metapod for experience, and then blocking out the Caterpie. As Ditto levels up, it increases its HP stat. This is the only stat that does not change when I use Transform, so it is getting slightly stronger, but it isn't improving its attack, defense, speed, or special whenever it's using this move, because the enemy stats are copied and overwrite all of its current quantities. But getting more HP is really good. At level 8 it has 28, at level 9 it has 30, and at level 10 it has 33. Because my health is slowly increasing, eventually I do defeat the Bugcatcher. This happens once Ditto levels up to 11. I just barely pull through with 2 hit points remaining. With that Bugcatcher gone, I need to find a different place to train. First of all, in the forest, I'm going to spam out all of my uses of Transform, and then go up against the mandatory Bugcatcher using Struggle. This makes his level 10 Caterpie very easy to deal with. Now, I want to mention Struggle here and all of its weird Generation 1 nuances. It does not bypass accuracy, it does 1/2 of the damage dealt in recoil, and it deals normal type damage as I've said before. The half damage in recoil is really annoying. So if you take all of the enemy's HP stats, you divide all of them by 2 and then round down to the nearest integer, add all of those values together, that is the amount of health that Ditto is going to need to defeat every single trainer. This becomes a significant problem once enemies start having 4 and 5 Pokemon. So right now it's not relevant, but in the mid and late game it is going to become extremely frustrating. Once arriving in Pewter City, I think it makes most sense to heal in the Pokemon Center. If you haven't healed in a center up until now in a playthrough, you will be teleported back to the player's house in Pallet Town, which is really inconvenient and then you waste a bunch of time walking. I healed in the Viridian City Pokemon Center to train against the Bugcatcher, but now healing in this center is going to allow me to train against the Diglett inside of Brock's gym. The Lightyear's Junior trainer, who recently got art for the channel, I actually got this art a while ago, but I forgot to put it in all of my videos. I can't believe I did that. I am so sorry, Serena. Anyways, check out Serena Vale. Their art is absolutely amazing. I am so grateful to have it in these videos. Transforming into Diglett gives me a speed tie against his first Pokemon and an outspeed on the Sandshrew. Using Scratch, I can 3-shot the Diglett. Remember, I have copied critical hit rate here, so sometimes I'll be able to 2-shot. Also, crits won't be good against Sandshrew. I want this one to defeat me as soon as possible. Then I can rinse and repeat, battling the Junior trainer over and over again, taking experience from the Diglett, which has trainer boosted yields for 1.5 times experience, and then I can lose and do it all again. Now right here is where I realized that I had forgotten to do something in the early game. I didn't buy potions in Viridian City, so I have blacked out a bunch of times and I lost all of the money that I started the run with. Realizing this now, about 15 minutes into the playthrough, I really didn't want to restart. So I just decided it's gonna be fine. I'll sell Bide once I beat Brock, and then I'll use that money to fund my potions for Route 3. What this does mean for the early game though is that I want to extend my blackout training as long as I can. And this is a really important correlation that you need to be aware of. Whenever Ditto is training with Struggle, it has to use potions to fund its efforts. But whenever Ditto is blackout training, it does not have to use potions, which allows it to stockpile these healing items for other trainers that it wants to use Struggle against. And in the earliest portions of the game, this balance is incredibly important. Okay, I want to draw your attention to this Ditto battle that I'm doing at level 12. Notice here that I 3-shot the Diglett with it surviving on a decent amount of health after the second hit. We're going to jump ahead now to the next battle where Ditto is level 13. After I use Transform, I copy all of Ditto's stats, but then when I use Scratch, I am doing significantly more damage. You can see this demonstrated even more once Ditto reaches level 15. Here, I am almost 2-shotting the enemy Diglett. Actually, in this case, I do because of a critical hit. So why is Ditto's damage increasing even though it's using Transform and copying Diglett's stats? To understand this, we need to look at the damage formula from Pokemon games. There used to be an incredible damage dissertation by Dewabafet on the internet, but this is no longer available. The only way to access it is with the Wayback Machine, which I find really unfortunate. Here is a screenshot from that article showing the damage formula. All of these weird brackets with the little hook on the end at the very bottom mean to floor the result of the calculation. So if there is a decimal point, we are going to remove that value and then continue with the next step in the calculation. Notice here that the first step in the damage calculation uses the Pokemon's current level. So as we level up, our damage is going to increase, despite the fact that we are copying all of the enemy Pokemon's stats. Because of this, at level 15, I am able to defeat the Junior trainer, and that puts an end to this early game blackout training with Ditto. Now I have to go back to the forest and fight Pokemon here. This training is a lot slower, but now that my level is so high, I'm benefiting from the level being part of the damage calculation, and I also have much more health, so I'm not going to lose to random wild Pokemon. Progress here was so slow that I decided it's probably better to deplete all of Transform's PP and then see if I can use Struggle to defeat Brock. Maybe, just maybe, a miracle will happen and level 15 is going to be enough for Ditto. But I think that the rock-solid Pokemon trainer is going to have something to say about that. Against Geodude, Ditto's Struggle is doing roughly 1/6 in damage. I think it'll take 6 turns to knock out, unless I get critical hits along the way. They really speed up my progress. Here though, let's understand some nuances of Struggle. Whenever this move calculates damage, if for example it does 2 damage, then I take 1 in recoil. But if I do 3 damage, then it divides 3 by 2 and finds that 1.5 is the amount of damage my Ditto should take in recoil, but everything in the Pokemon games rounds down. So this is an effective way of reducing the amount of recoil damage that a Pokemon deals. Put simply, always deal damage in odd quantities. Right now with Ditto, it's doing 5 to 6 damage to the Geodude and 3 to 4 damage to the Onix at level 15. This is pretty good. The maximum damage roll is much more difficult to achieve than the lower damage roll, so on most turns I'm going to be dealing 5 or 3 damage, which is perfect for rounding of recoil. The problem is, even though this is the case, I'm still taking too much damage from Brock's Pokemon, and Ditto is only able to do about 1/3 to the Onix before it faints. Obviously I'll take the Blackout here so I have the experience from the Geodude, but I think going back to the forest and training here makes more sense right now for Ditto. I'm going to admit I was being impatient here. I blacked out against a Metapod trying to knock it out for a little bit more experience, and then after heading back to the forest briefly, I just decided, no, I'm going to try and black out against Brock. Maybe while getting experience I can also chance a win against him, because critical hits when using Transform function a little bit weirdly. Stealing Geodude's species might give us a roughly 4% chance to crit, but when we get one of the crits, it bypasses our changed stats, and you need to understand how this works in Generation 1. The game stores the Pokemon's data in 2 separate locations. One is for the party structure, so basically the Pokemon you have on your team, and the other one is for the battle structure, what's being used currently in battle. Because the Game Boy doesn't have a lot of processing power, every time they wanted to recalculate a stat, they would save that quantity to the battle structure but not to the team structure. So in Generation 1, when you get a critical hit, it bypasses the battle structure, looks at the team structure, and then determines damage based on those stats. This is why when you get a critical hit, it bypasses things like badge boosts or stat changes. However, with Ditto, this functions differently because we have transformed into a different Pokemon with different stats. But when we bypass the battle structure, which is all of the transformed stats, we go back to Ditto's original structure in the party, meaning we get to leverage Ditto's regular stats when critting in battle. And this is a beautiful way to bypass the main downside of Transform. What this allows me to do is use Ditto's stats to crit with moves other than Struggle. Believe me, this mechanic is so important for this run, it might be the most important mechanic in the entire playthrough. But right now against Brock, it doesn't really help out that much. Critting with Tackle is still not great, and the difference between Ditto's level and Geodude's level is not so significant that I can obliterate it in a single hit. So we are watching me lose to Brock over and over again. This is not particularly fun, and I'm also not leveling up particularly quickly. What I want you to understand is that there is a much better way to play this early game. But this is a first playthrough, and I'm trying to figure out what the best option is. A lot of available strategies have been taken away from me at this point because of the trainers that I've defeated. So I have worked myself into a corner, and in the moment, this felt like the best option for me. Eventually, after almost 45 minutes of time, I am able to level up to 20 and then use Struggle against Brock. I know that this level is going to be enough. I don't think 23 at the next damage rounding threshold is realistic. Now at level 20, I can 4-shot the Geodude, which is really good, and that's without a critical hit. The Onix takes a lot of damage from each struggle. This exposes Ditto to one risk. If the Onix chooses Bide before I'm close to knocking it out, then it unleashes energy and knocks out Ditto, so I can still lose here, which is a little bit awful. And I can't black out because it would restore Transform's PP and I would no longer be able to use Struggle. So this is the point in the run that I'm going to take my first reset, after 43 blackouts in the early game. Luckily for Ditto, it doesn't need a second reset here. I get lucky against Brock. The Onix doesn't go for Bide until it's on low health, and then 2 struggles are all all that I need to finish it off. Ditto gets a Brock split of 45 minutes and 15 seconds. What an exhausting early game. Now the Pokemon that I've been comparing Ditto with is Abra. It took way longer to beat Brock, but once it did, it gets Mega Punch and then eventually Psychic, and it just steamrolls through the rest of the game. That is not the case for Ditto. Every section of this run has a weird, unique problem that Ditto needs to solve. Before proceeding, I sell bide, use all of my money to buy potions, and now I felt ready for Route 3. I wanted to be careful about potion use, not using too many of them, but if I don't use them, then I'm going to run into issues. This bug catcher has 3 Pokemon: Caterpie, Weedle, and Caterpie. That means I am going to take 44 damage in recoil defeating these 3 Pokemon. And right now Ditto has a maximum of 57 HP. Also, the Caterpies can use Tackle and the Weedle can use Poison Sting. Luckily, I'm a high enough level that I one-shot all of these Pokemon, but I didn't heal with a potion, trying to conserve these items, and as a result I get punished. So I should have healed. Ditto started the fight on 36 HP, and if I had healed 20 points, then I would have gone up to 56. Every time I use a potion, I want to be careful about this, getting the maximum HP of healing from each individual one. I took the blackout here because I didn't save in front of the bug catcher. I'll just spam out Transform and Viridian Forest and then go back and fight him with full health. Knocking out his 3 Pokemon takes Ditto down from full health to 13 HP, forcing me to use 2 potions after the battle. I am now left with only 4 healing items. Luckily, Youngster Ben only has 2 Pokemon, so he's fairly easy to finish. I use 2 more potions, leaving me with only 2. Then I fight the lass who only has 2 Pokemon. I only have to use a single potion after this, reset her position, and then battle the bug catcher. This is the final mandatory battle of Route 3, and it's pretty easy for Ditto. I pull through on orange health and then head towards Mount Moon. This location brings with it a bunch of items that I can sell for money in order to buy more potions. I'm gonna have to backtrack to Pewter City, but it's definitely worth it. The first of these items is Water Gun. Then I go over to the left. This is something I normally don't do in my solo challenges because it wastes a bunch of steps, but over here there's another potion, and today with Ditto it makes sense to pick up every single one of these items. On the basement floor through the first ladder, I can pick up an HP up. This item is so important for the Ditto playthrough. I didn't realize how important, and in this run I was so hyper fixated on buying more potions that I am going to sell this. There's another potion to the left of the Super Nerd. I grab the rare candy, the escape rope, and then the TM from Mega Punch. This concludes all of the useful items that I can sell in Mount Moon. In my next playthrough, I'm going to use the escape rope to escape the cave, but today, because I'm so low on potions, I'm going to walk all the way back out of the cave and then to Pewter City to sell the escape rope, just so I can buy myself more potions. This section of the game really is potions, 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 and it would have been even if I had bought the initial 10 without just blacking out and losing all of my money. Selling all of these items gives me 7,744 Pokédollars, which lets me buy 25 potions to continue my effort. Inside Mount Moon, I wanted to fight a bunch of additional trainers to level Ditto up as much as possible. Some of these are fairly straightforward to defeat, like the bug catcher at the beginning of the cave and the Super Nerd with Magnemite and Voltorb. The first rocket down the first ladder has Sandshrew, Rattata, and Zubat, a team of 3. I didn't heal to full health because I didn't want to waste potion healing points, but because of this, I have to take a reset. I did have to potion even though it's a little bit inefficient in order to be able to win here. The Hiker is a pretty close battle for Ditto, but it is able to pull through with a win. By this point, I am nearing level 24, and the reserve of potions is going to last me throughout all of my training in Mount Moon, so I continued this on the basement floor before arriving at the mandatory trainers. The Fossil Super Nerd has Pokemon with decent HP stats, the Grimer specifically. It's got 43, so when I knock it out, I'm going to take 21 HP of recoil. Then on the Voltorb, it's going to be 16, and the same for the Coughing, totaling 32 points just on those 2 Pokemon. And the entire fight is going to cost Ditto 53 HP. If you were paying attention to the start of the battle, you would have noticed that I had 52 HP points, so I wasn't going to survive. However, I level up after knocking out the Voltorb, gain back a small amount of health, and this would have let me knock out the Coughing. But the problem is, the Coughing only has 2 moves, Tackle and Smog. If it missed, I would have won, but it doesn't. Because of this, it deals damage, and Ditto knocks itself out with struggle. I'm going to address it here because I need to at some point in the video. I will not allow myself to proceed with the playthrough if I won because I have an HM user on my party. For example, I could just catch a Pokemon in Mount Moon, then Ditto knocks itself out in struggle, finishing the Coughing, but I make it through the battle and can proceed with the playthrough because of the HM user on my party. This just isn't in the spirit of the solo challenge. If I win, I need to do it with Ditto winning exclusively regardless of HM users in my party. The solution for this battle is simple: heal all the way to full health, then defeat the Super Nerd. Now, Jesse and James don't cause any problems for me, but I want you to note their HP stats: 36, 37, and 37. So my recoil budget here needs to be 54 HP. My Ditto right now, being very over leveled, has no problems. Its maximum HP is 68. So it gets through the battle on 10 HP and exits Mount Moon. Just outside of here, I'm going to mention mention some items that I almost never pick up in these playthroughs because they waste too much time. Up here in this little isolated hilly area, I can grab a hidden grape ball. Note that hidden items take longer to pick up in terms of frames when compared with regular items. However, in this case, I just need to sell as much stuff as possible to continue using potions. I can also pick up TM04, which is Whirlwind. This is honestly a pretty useless item in almost every playthrough except for today with Ditto. I sell it for money, and then I can buy myself 14 more potions, leaving myself with only 4 Poké Dollars. I pick up the rare candy in Cerulean City. I want to use these at the maximum possible level. There are 12 rare candies in a playthrough of Yellow version, so ideally I'm going to start using them on Ditto once we get to level 88. I was a little bit indecisive here trying to choose what to do next. I'm on the clock, so I need to make a decision quickly. Do I fight the rival who has 4 Pokemon, or do I go into Misty's gym, fight the trainers for a little bit more experience, and then potentially battle Misty? She only has 2 Pokemon, so I think that she's going to be the easier option for Ditto right now. But I will battle the trainers for additional experience before taking her on. I think this was the right call. When I defeat this swimmer at the beginning of the gym who only has 2 Pokemon, Ditto is left with 17 hit points before it levels up to 25. This is not encouraging when there's a team of 4 coming up. But before I truly confront that, let's face Misty. With Struggle at level 25, Ditto has a 2-shot on the Staryu and a 37.6% chance to 3-shot the Starmie. These are honestly pretty decent damage ranges, and I think that Ditto could pull this off if I reset a bunch here. That said, I'm not sure that that is the right approach for Ditto long term, or even short term. If I black out here to Misty over and over again and gain experience from just the Staryu, at least I'm leveling up and then I have a better rival 2 fight on Nugget Bridge. I will admit the damage ranges seduced me a little bit here. I thought maybe it was best to just continuously reset until I eventually locked through Misty, but after a total of 4 resets, I decided against this. I wanted to see what it would be like to use Staryu against Misty. However, then when I blacked out, I teleported all the way back to Pewter City because I did not heal in the Cerulean City Pokemon Center, so I ended up resetting anyways just so I could go back to Cerulean City. I heal in the Pokemon Center and then return to Misty to fight her as Staryu. Right here I want to say a huge thank you to Autotonsorialist for working on an edition of RBY XP Router that allows me to transform into the first Pokemon on the enemy's team. Without this, I would not be able to share these damage ranges with you. When Ditto at level 25 transforms into Staryu, here are its damage ranges, and they're honestly not that bad. In my first battle against Misty, I'm able to defeat the Staryu, move on to the Starmie, and bring it down to red health. And that was really encouraging, so I think blacking out here to Misty over and over again is the correct strategy. I get both experience and a chance to defeat her. If Staryu crits enough, and Staryu's crit chance is 16%, then I'll get through the fight fairly quickly. My second fight didn't go nearly as well, but I still was able to defeat the Staryu, gaining experience. And the loop from the Pokemon Center back to Misty's gym, provided I don't make silly mistakes like this, is really quick, so this overall is very efficient blackout training. I thought that it was going to take me a while to win here, but then I just get a massive critical hit with Struggle. It takes Staryu down to orange health, and from there I chip away at it while it uses Harden. I get another critical hit and it goes down. So I beat Misty on my 3rd attempt when transforming. For Ditto, that is a second gym split of 59 minutes and 19 seconds. It's important now to sell Bubble Beam and use all of the money that I earned from Misty to buy more potions. I'm able to get 10 more, and then I went to the wild to fight Pokemon. I wanted to deplete Transform and then fight the rival with Struggle. I wish I had known his Pokemon's HP stats off the top of my head, because the cumulative Struggle damage that I will deal to myself during this battle is 85. Right now Ditto has 72 HP, so even if this fight goes perfectly, his Pokemon never damage Ditto, and I get critical hits every single turn one-shotting, I am not going to be able to win with Struggle. So I'm going to take a blackout here, realizing that this is the case, and I guess it's time to blackout train against the rival. Transform into Spearow. This gives Ditto 5 uses of Peck, Growl, Leer, and Fury Attack. I crit right away for massive damage using Fury Attack and knock out the Spearow in one turn. Okay, this is a good start. I crit the Sandshrew, getting a 4-turn Fury Attack, which knocks it out. Rattata's next. I get a 3-hit here, then I miss with Fury Attack, but my 5th use of the move crits and Rattata goes down, leaving only Eevee. I have 5 turns of Peck left over to use on it. There's the potential for Spearow to lose here. Eevee can go for Sand Attack and then I can miss a bunch. Eevee could go for Growl and then I would not have enough damage to knock it out in 5 turns. However, it does go for Growl, but slightly late. I was already able to attack twice with Peck. And then I just keep pecking. It does go for Sand Attack. I have 1 use of Peck left over. I go for it, it hits, and Eevee goes down. I defeated the rival on my first attempt using Transform against him. By the way, this is not going to happen every single time. This battle can be so much worse than this. But right now, I just lucked through it with a rival 2-split of 1 hour, 1 minute, and 35 seconds. Deplete Transform, fight the trainers on Nugget Bridge. These last, with Pidgey and Nidoran female, are quite scary for Ditto. Pidgey can use Sand Attack, and the Nidoran female has super effective damage with Double Kick. Speaking of super effective damage, this junior trainer with his singular Mankey can do so much damage if it goes for Low Kick. And it does here, depleting a ton of health. I'll talk about this later, but in scenarios like this, it is sometimes better to save before the battle, reset, and just wait for the Mankey to use something like Leer. Then you don't lose HP, and you can extend your limited potions for future battles. At the end of Route 24, I get the Nugget from the Rocket. This is going to extend my potion budget significantly. Also, just past him, after grabbing Charmander, I can pick up the TM for Thunder Wave, which is great to sell. This lets me purchase 27 more potions, but I was hungry for more. One way of getting more is fighting the Hiker followed by the Junior Trainer and then picking up the Seismic Toss TM. The issue here is that Ditto is just not going to be able to make it through the Hiker's team. The Geodude are using either Defense Curl or Tackle, so they slow my progress down or they do damage to me. And the fact that he has 4 Pokemon, one of them being Machop, which only knows Karate Chop, makes this a very hopeless endeavor. I tried way too many times here, a total of 4, before I finally got the memo and realized I shouldn't be fighting this guy. I'm just going to battle the Junior Trainer, skip the Seismic Toss TM, and continue. The rocket outside of Cerulean City gives the player the TM for Dig. This is the only copy of this item in the entire game. In pretty much every playthrough, it makes sense to teach this to either your solo Pokemon or Charmander, but today I decided to sell it to get more potions. Since I made the potion mistake in the early game, I decided to do this in today's playthrough, even though it might be the suboptimal play. On the SSN, I can battle a bunch of trainers. For example, the Youngster to get access to the Body Slam TM, which I can then sell for more money. I can also fight the Gentleman here, which give great cash prizes. I arrive at Rival 3 at level 30. Ditto has 83 hit points. This is not enough to make it through this battle using Struggle. The minimum recoil I will take is 93 hit points, so I would need 94 or higher HP in order to win here. Remember that HP up that I mentioned in Mount Moon, which I sold because of my earlier potion mistake? Yeah, that HP up would make this battle much more manageable if I wanted to struggle my way through. Realizing that it's not really an option, I let all of my HM users faint, I black out heading back to Cerulean City, and then walk back to the SSN. I'm going to try to beat the rival now using Transform. I think with critical hits from Fury Attack and Peck, plus the fact that I'm transforming into Spearow, which has a 14% chance to crit, this should be fairly manageable. Also, I can blackout here if I'm not successful, which is the case in my first attempt. This teleported me back to Cerulean City for a second time, and I am not going to let it happen for a third. This is one rare instance where healing inside of the Vermilion City Pokemon Center in yellow version is a good idea. Normally I prevent it so that I can use Dig to teleport back to Cerulean City after defeating Lieutenant Surge, but the walking distance from Cerulean City to the SSN is so significant, and it's even pretty bad just going from the Vermilion City Pokemon Center all the way back to the SSN each time I black out here. I'll mention just a few other strategies that can be employed here to give Spearow a little bit of a better chance during this fight. I can use Leer to lower the enemy's defense, giving Fury Attack and Peck more damage. Also, Growl can be used, but I don't think it's the best choice. In general, if I spend time using Leer, I'm going to take more and more damage throughout the fight, and to me, it seems better to just attack right away, go for the upside of crits, and if I don't get one, then I black out and I just try again. It started to feel like this was hopeless, and I was considering if I should train on Route 11, but then I got lucky. I critical hit the Sandshrew doing massive damage, knocked it out with a follow-up Peck, moved on to the Eevee, missed a Fury Attack, but this is okay, I still had enough PP because of my earlier crits. Using Peck, I'm able to finish it in 2 more turns and get a rival 3 split of 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 17 seconds. Since I just used Transform, I have PP for the move, and I might as well try to use it to defeat Surge. After all, his Raichu gives me a lot of moves that are going to be great against his Raichu. Surge's one and only Pokemon has Thunderbolt, Mega Punch, Mega Kick, and Growl. I can transform into Raichu and then use Mega Kick for massive damage against the electric type. I just hope that he doesn't know what he's doing. Unfortunately, in this case, he's winning the speed tie, so he uses Mega Punch 2 times in a row and Ditto faints. In the second fight, he goes for Mega Kick and obliterates Ditto. Okay, this is not great. Surge is always inconsistent, like here, where he misses with Mega Kick. I transform, he wins the speed tie, hits with Mega Punch, but it doesn't do that much. My Mega Kick, on the other hand, does massive damage with a critical critical hit and one-shot Surge's only Pokemon. Interestingly here, there's a pairing between the Rival and the gym leaders. Rival 2 and Misty came very close together, and Rival 3 and Surge also came very close together. Of all of the major battles in the run so far, Surge has definitely been the easiest one. Maybe the Rival in the lab might be a little bit easier. I did make it through that one on my first attempt. You know who's way harder for Ditto than Surge? The Rapping Lass. There is a reason that early into doing these solo challenges, I quickly decided that Ditto followed by Mewtwo were going to be the two last runs that I played. Ditto is beautiful because it gives me a chance to emphasize all of these annoying trainers that have caused so many problems throughout this series. The Rapping Lass requires at least 95 HP. Ditto's current HP stat is 86, so at level 31 I'm not going to be able to defeat her using Struggle. And if you take one look at the Oddish, you're going to realize that I'm also not going to be able to defeat her if I transform. That would give me my only damage dealing move as Absorb, and then I would have to use Stun Spore, deplete Poison Powder, which will not affect her Pokemon, and then use Struggle as Oddish to knock out her remaining Pokemon. If I use Struggle as Oddish to knock out her Pokemon, then we're back to the exact same scenario as we would have been with Ditto just starting the fight with Struggle. I reset here a bunch before I finally put 2 and 2 together and realized, no, this cannot work. I just need to buckle down, train until Ditto has at least 95 HP. And even that might be cutting it a little bit close, because then if I take a single hit point of damage, I'm still going to lose. I finished the trainers on Route 6, which I didn't fight before, and then I go to Route 11 to fight all of these people. By the way, the engineers here also give decent cash prizes, so this is an okay place to train at this point in the run. Eventually I had to resort to wild Pokemon to level Ditto up to 35, where finally Ditto has 96 HP and I can return to the Rapping Lass to exact vengeance one last time. It's not a difficult battle now because Struggle one-shots all of her Pokemon. Ditto survives with 2 hit points and moves on through the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet. There is this bug catcher who, throughout my Pokemon Yellow series, I have been wondering if at any point he is going to cause problems. Today is his last chance, and honestly, this fight gets really close. Ditto goes down to 15 hit points by the time it knocks out his Venonat. Slowbone inside of Rock Tunnel is pretty annoying. I'm lucky I got hit by Tail Whip here because I think I was going to 3-shot the Cubone, but after Tail Whip I get badge boosted and I'm able to knock it out in 2 turns. Also, the following Slowpoke takes 2 hits to knock out. It does use Headbutt, dealing some damage. Still though, Ditto pulls through with 13 hit points. The Status Condition Junior Trainer is next. So will I one-shot the Oddish? Well, yes, if I get a critical hit. Nice. I move on to the Bulbasaur, fail to knock it out because I don't get a critical hit, and then, like her name suggests, she inflicts a status condition, Poison, which is very problematic because I did not buy any antidotes because I was trying to save as much money as possible for potions. So this means I have to reset unless I want to backtrack out of the tunnel using Dig, Heal, and then walk all the way back. That is not the smart choice. It is far faster to just quickly reset. She doesn't inflict a status condition in the next battle, and I make it by her to the self-destructing hiker. If I'm using Struggle here, then I need to knock out 3 Rock-type Pokemon. The Geodude is taking 3 hits at the beginning, and while I knock them out, I need to hope that they do not go for self-destruct, or slow me down by spamming Defense Curl over and over again. The second Geodude goes for self-destruct, so does the following Graveler, and Ditto faints. I tried one more time, and no, this isn't going to work with Struggle. What I need to do is use an Elixir or an Ether to boost Ditto's PP and transform. This way I can be a Rock type and resist self-destruct. I can also set up Defense Curl, and unless they get a critical hit, I should be fine. There is a downside to this strategy. If they don't use self-destruct fast enough, I could deplete all of the uses of Defense Curl, Rock Throw, and Tackle. If somehow the self-destructing hiker does not choose self-destruct for 15 turns in a row, then I will be forced to use self-destruct with Ditto, ending the battle in a loss for me. Luckily this doesn't happen, he uses self-destruct quickly, and Ditto emerges victorious. There is one more trainer in Rock Tunnel. I could just run out of Repel steps, and then fight wild Pokemon until I have Transform depleted and I can use Struggle against her. Or I could simply transform into her Meowth and try and defeat her team. I went the Transform route because Meowth gets the same type attack bonus with Scratch, Bite, and Payday, and it knows 3 moves that can deal damage, which should be enough to manage the following Oddish as well as Pidgey. Well, it would have been enough until the Oddish paralyzes with Stun Spore, and then due to the status condition, I end up taking 1 reset. Actually, 2 resets because the Oddish gets really annoying with Sleep Powder in the second battle, but 3rd time's the charm. I do make it through here eventually. She is one trainer in these Pokemon Yellow runs that I kind of wish we got art for at some time during the series, because occasionally she does cause problems, but mostly I remember her as a kid whenever my Pokemon was like paralyzed and poisoned. I was just barely about to get through the darkness, and then I realized, oh, there's one more trainer, she would defeat me me and teleport me all the way back to the beginning of the cave. With her out of the way, Ditto now has access to so many other items. It can get the Swift TM south of Lavender Town, which I can sell in Celadon City. I can also explore the Rocket Hideout. Making it by the guard is really easy because transforming into Raticate is so good. Ditto gets access to same type attack bonus Hyper Fang. Inside the hideout, I fight one additional trainer. He has 2 Machop. I want to emphasize here that with Karate Chop, I am stealing the Machop's crit rate, which is 7%, and then whenever I crit using Karate Chop, we take Ditto's attack stat to calculate damage. This allows crits with Karate Chop to deal so much damage to the opposing Machop. This is a great chance for us to talk about this mechanic, but it wasn't something that I was cognitively really aware of when I was doing this Ditto playthrough. I had realized that crits were doing more damage, but I hadn't realized that there was a synergy between stealing the enemy's base speed and then using a high critical hit rate move. More on that later. For now, I just did this battle so I could get access to the double team TM and this hidden nugget so that I can buy as many fresh waters as possible. While I do have to buy these one at a time, wasting a ton of frames, this is the most cost-effective healing item that I can purchase in the game. I could have bought a bunch of super potions, but I'm really worried about running out of healing items and money during the mid-game. I'm anticipating that Ditto's going to have to train all the way from 37 to 88, and maybe even beyond that, because 3 of the rare candies are walled off after you get access to Surf, so if I can't beat Koga, then I'm going to have to train to a higher level in order to get level 100 to fight him. And even if I beat Koga, if I can't beat someone like Blaine or Giovanni, then I'm not going to have access to the rare candy in Victory Road. It's always really painful with these runs like Weedle and Magikarp, where you can't use all of the rare candies that are available during Pokemon Yellow just because you need level 100 before they're available. I really hope that that's not going to be the case with Ditto. I could train in the surrounding areas of the game, but I wanted to see if I could fight the rival right away. His Pokemon Tower team is really disgusting for Ditto to face. Fearow, 71 HP, that's 35 points of recoil damage. Magnemite, 48 HP, 24 damage of recoil. Shelder is the exact same as Magnemite. Sandshrew requires 26 recoil damage, and Eevee requires 33. Ditto will take a total of 142 points of recoil damage, so it needs 143 HP to struggle through this fight. At level 37, I have 102 HP, so this fight is not possible at this level if I want to use Struggle. And I really want to use Struggle. I desperately want to use Struggle. I bet some of you know why. It's pretty obscure. Now that I've failed fighting the rival, we're going to talk about why I am refusing to do this battle with Transform. So, if you've seen Picaspray's video with Ditto, at some point during the run, when he arrived in Fuchsia City, he was trying to use Struggle, and he realized that Ditto had forgot how to use the move. Despite Transform's PP being depleted, and Ditto knowing no other moves, whenever he tried to use Struggle, it would just say that Ditto didn't have any PP left in Transform, he couldn't select another move, and so he had lost the fight and was forced to reset. He tried a bunch of things to fix Ditto, turning the game on and off, depositing Ditto into the PC, withdrawing Ditto, leveling Ditto up. None of the things that he did fixed the problem. Now, we've had a lot of time to figure out what's going on here, and I can actually show you exactly what is happening, and I'm going to go one step further in this video. I am going to show you the internals of the game and exactly what is happening to cause Ditto to fall into this glitch. First, we need to bring the rival's team back up on screen and talk about the moves that Fearow has. It knows Growl, Leer, Fury Attack, and Mirror Move. The last of these is the culprit that causes the glitch. In Generation 1, Game Freak didn't really know how to code things particularly well, so when you use Mirror Move, it deducts 1 PP. But then when Mirror Move selects a different move to use, it deducts another PP, so Mirror Move goes down by 2 PP in one turn. To compensate for this, they simply add 1 PP back to Mirror Move. This seems like everything's going to be fine. At the end of a single turn using Mirror Move, it has lost only 1 PP, which is as we would expect. Remember when I said there are 2 different RAM structures for the Pokemon, the party structure as well as the battle structure? In Generation 1, whenever you use a move, PP is deducted from both of these structures, so they're always mirrored to each other. This is not the same for stats. Stats do not remain mirrored, which is why all of the critical hit stuff that I explained before works. However, when you use Transform, the game doesn't want to continue deducting PP from Transform. After all, you're not using Transform anymore. So the game has a flag that tells you if you're transformed or not. If this flag is set, then the game prevents PP from being deducted from the party structure. This causes a massive problem because as soon as you use Mirror Move, it increments the PP by 1 of the 4th move slot that Ditto has. But there is no 4th move. The glitch then occurs because the game checks all of your PP quantities regardless of if there is a move in that slot or not. If it finds that one of the moves has a single PP in it, then the game prevents you from using Struggle because it only uses Struggle if all of the moves have 0 PP. I love how weird and obscure Generation 1 glitches are. This is absolutely absolutely amazing. So I am avoiding transforming into the rival's Fearow because I don't want to use Mirror Move, because if I do use Mirror Move, it will increment the PP of a move that doesn't exist, and this will cause Ditto to forget how to use Struggle, and from there on out I will have to use Transform to beat the entire game. You might wonder why depositing a Pokemon doesn't fix this. Well, when you deposit into the PC, some parameters of the Pokemon are lost, like their current stats, but current HP is not lost, and current PP counts are also not lost. You can't heal the Pokemon because it's not going to reset the PP quantity to the original value because there is no move in the 4th slot. I also experimented to see if it was possible to put Mirror Move in the 1st slot, which is Transform, but when Ditto is transformed, you cannot swap the positions of your moves on your current set. So we were left at the mercy of the game deciding that Mirror Move needs to go in the 4th slot. By the way, this glitch can also occur with one other move in Generation 1. Say you transform into a Pokemon that knows Metronome. This move works exactly the same way since it calls another move during battle. PP decrements by 2 and then increments by 1. If I want to avoid transforming into the rival's Fearow so I can continue using Struggle, then I need to find a better place to train. And honestly, there aren't great options available for Ditto right now. I tried fighting Erica and some of the trainers in her gym. You will have seen that I lost to one of them. This fight against Erica doesn't go well. I end up losing here on the Weepinbell of all Pokemon, so even Blackout training here, transforming into the Tangela isn't going to be a good choice. I tried taking on the Dojo for experience, but these fighting types have a lot of HP, and they're also pretty good against Ditto. I don't even make it by the 2nd Pokemon on this Black Belt's team. North of Lavender Town, there are some trainers that I truly never fight in these solo challenges, but today I am scraping the bottom of the barrel just to try and find some experience with Ditto so that I don't have to battle wild Pokemon. Remember, without the Pokeflute, I can't go to Cycling Road or the route on the other side of the map to Fuchsia City. It's actually 4 routes, 12, 13, 14, and 15. There are so many trainers in those regions of the game, but they're walled off to me right now. I can see why people who have played Ditto in the past have run into this glitch, because you really want to make it by the rival, and you can simply turn into the Fearow, spam Fury Attack, get some crits, use Mirror Move, and defeat his team. But losing Struggle is a high price to pay for the victory. There's a bunch of trainers on Route 8, but I can't beat some of them because these Pokemon have ridiculous HP stats, so Ditto ends up losing here. I also failed defeating the Gamblers team, which is Poliwag, Poliwag, and Poliwhirl. I went back to Erica's gym, fought the Cool Trainer, and Ditto loses here as well. I returned to the dojo feeling very hopeless, and I lost here as well. This is where I started to spiral. Am I really going to have to fight wild Pokemon to level up to like 50, 60 maybe to get enough HP to defeat Rival 4? I think that might be the solution that I have to go for. The problem is fighting wild Pokemon, I'm not going to be earning money for every battle. So there is the possibility that I might run out of fresh water. I went back to the department store, bought as many of these as I could, bringing my money down to 0. With my bag stocked, I hunkered in for an incredibly long training session in Diglett's Cave. I used this area to train with both Weedle and Magikarp. With Magikarp, it was incredibly frustrating because of disobedience. With Weedle, Poison Sting did very little damage. And now with Ditto, defeating the Diglett here is not giving me very much HP stat experience. So I'm gaining experience, but not the right kind of experience to optimize Ditto's time against the rival in Pokemon Tower. This is just really frustrating, but I don't really know where else to go with Ditto. Plus, there is a unique synergy here. With Diglett having low HP, I'm not having to spend as many freshwater healing Ditto after every single battle. But really, that's just a silver lining. I started this training at 2 hours 6 minutes, and I reached level 50 from 41 at 2 hours and 32 minutes. Ditto can now beat the Cool Trainer in Erica's gym, but it still can't beat Erica. I tried 3 times with Struggle, and then once using Transform, all of which were defeats. At level 51, Ditto has 140 HP. I need 142 to defeat the rival, so this is still not enough. I am able to go back to the fighting dojo now and defeat some of the trainers here, leveling Ditto up to 52. This gives me the perfect amount of HP, 143. It is exactly enough to defeat the rival, provided he doesn't attack me once with any of his Pokemon. I get a critical hit against the Fearow, Magnemite comes in next, Struggle is able to one-shot because of my high level. Shelter follows, I just need to hope that it doesn't go for Tackle or Supersonic. It's never going to because Struggle is able to one-hit. Sandshrew comes in, I'm able to knock it out in one turn. It is by far the most defensive Pokemon on his team, leaving only Eevee. I go for Struggle, and Ditto is is able to one-shot, surviving Rival 4 on 1 hit point, retaining Struggle in the process. It only took me 2 hours, 46 minutes, and 6 seconds to get to this point in the game. The irony of all of this, and I think the reason why a lot of people miss why this glitch occurs, is because as soon as you defeat the rival in Pokemon Tower, you have to continue using Transform against all of the ghosts. Struggle is a normal move. It can't do any damage to ghost-type Pokemon, so I have to transform into Ghastly and use Lick to knock out the ghosts here. It's so nice that there are not very many ghosts during this playthrough. After Pokemon Tower, there's only 3 more left. I'm sure they're not going to be that bad, right? Speaking of not that bad, let's talk about Jesse and James. I may have made it by them without a scratch in Mount Moon, and I'm gonna do it again here in Pokemon Tower, but I do want you to know that this battle doesn't always go like this. I still have to transform. I haven't depleted my PP, so I turn into Meowth. It has Growl, Bite, Payday, and Screech. It seems like a decent set. I can lower defense and then use physical moves to do a lot of damage to both Arbok and Weezing. Cycling Road is a place that I usually train, but the Coughing Line has decent HP stats. No, they don't. What am I saying? The reason I have it in my head that the Coughing Line has good HP is just because their defense stats are fairly high. Anyway, that's the reason I decided not to fight people here. Going straight through this area, I head to the Safari Zone next. This is where all of my money worries are finally gone. I have access to so many high-priced items that I can sell. I have purchased so many fresh water by this point in the playthrough that I should be good from here until level 100. I went back and tried Erica again, but I lost 3 more times with Struggle, so no, it doesn't seem like it's time for this battle yet. I can fight trainers on Route 15, but there are some people here that I have to avoid because they have teams of 4 and 5 Pokemon. Also, the experience yields here are just not very good. At level 55, I went into Koga's gym. It would be so nice to defeat him, get Surf outside of battle, and then fight trainers on Route 21. The problem is, this juggler has 3 Drowsy, each with 83 HP, and 1 Kadabra. I'm able to knock out the final Drowsy, but Ditto also knocks itself out. I can't even win this fight with Ditto right now because the required HP is 159. I go west to the city and I fight this Bird Keeper for some experience. I do want you to note his team. 3 Spearow and 1 Fearow. Every single member of his team has Mirror Move. So this is another trainer that you probably don't want to use Transform against. On Route 14, I fight a Bird Keeper who has 5 Pokemon and I don't have enough HP to win against him. During this video, I have been skipping some resets and blackouts. I just can't go through all of them because this playthrough is so incredibly long. This is one of only a couple projects this year where we're having timeline performance issues inside our video editing software. The other one, by the way, was the Nido's video because we had so much footage in that one as well. I think that this one's having problems because each individual video file is so long. I should have had the foresight to chop it up into smaller parts as I was recording. Also, I do need to learn how to take breaks. Often with these solo challenges, I just hyperfixate and sit in my chair for like 8 hours forgetting to drink and eat. I do not recommend. Everyone take care of yourself. At level 58, I return to the Juggler, and now with Struggle, I can one-shot all of his Pokemon, so he's not able to do any damage. And Ditto just barely pulls through with 6 HP. I fought the other trainers inside the gym, like this Tamer with 3 Pokemon. Ditto also just barely pulls through here with 4 HP. All of these fights are getting kind of sketchy, which makes me very worried for what's to come. But maybe, just maybe, I'm going to be able to defeat Koga. If I can, I will unlock so much high experience training. Koga has 3 Venonats and 1 Venomoth. It's scary that he has a fighting type ace. Another thing that's scary is that the Venonat line has a decent HP stat, so all of the Venonats have over 100 HP. 113, 118, 123, and 138 for the Venomoth. So my recoil health budget here needs to be 246. Right now Ditto has a max health of 164. This fight isn't possible at my current level using Struggle. I tried using Transform since turning into Venonat doesn't seem like that bad of an idea. We have Toxic Tackle, Sleep Powder, and Psychic. Psychic is super effective against all of Koga's Pokemon, and I can use Sleep Powder to put them to sleep. The problem is I become a Bug Poison type, and then all of Koga's Pokemon are going to hit my Venonat for super effective damage with Psybeam or Psychic. Also, because I have to transform into his first Venonat, which is his lowest level Pokemon, I am then outsped by his 3 remaining team members. This is just not a good matchup for Ditto. Unfortunately, it looks like I should be going back to Diglett's Tunnel and training against wild Pokemon to level up. I got to 60 and then I came back to Koga, and it was here that I realized what I should probably be doing in this section of the game. It's not that efficient to battle wild Pokemon. I have finished off every single trainer that has decent experience yields, except for the people that I can't battle because I don't have enough health. I can instead transform into Venonat, defeat one or two of Koga's Pokemon, getting okay experience from both of them, and then rinse and repeat this cycle over and over again. I'm not using any fresh water to do this training. I'm gaining trainer boosted experience, and the walk time from the Pokemon Center back into Koga's gym is not that bad. I started doing this training around 3 hours and 20 minutes, and by 3 hours 33 minutes and 33 seconds on the clock, I'm around level 62. I was able to make it to the Venomoth here, but I'm still nowhere close to defeating Koga. Maybe there's another way for me to leverage blackout training that's going to be more efficient than battling Koga. I can go back to Cycling Road from the Fuchsia City Pokemon Center, which is a direction I very rarely travel. I can then battle the biker boss who I have not fought yet, transform into his coughing, and potentially knock out some of his Pokemon. It is a little bit annoying because I have to deplete both Smog and Tackle to do this, but then I start using Struggle and I can take care of a coughing, a wheezing, as well as a second coughing in this case, gaining experience from 3 Pokemon. I locked in, tried this training for a while. I went back to Koga to see if that was maybe the better solution. I went back to the biker boss. I really was having a difficult time deciding. Eventually the game decided for me because I beat the biker boss, so I can no longer fight him. And I don't like to save between each individual blackout so that I can reset in the case that I accidentally defeat the trainer, because that's really time inefficient. Every time I blackout, I would waste 4 additional seconds saving the game. So I am forced back to Koga to do more blackout training. This is where I want all of you to think very deeply about the problem that Ditto finds itself in. It can't defeat Koga, it can't get Surf, and because of this, it's limited in its options for training in this section of the run. I have defeated pretty much every trainer that gives good experience. I could fight some other random NPCs, but other than resorting to wild battles, which is definitely not going to be as efficient since I'm using Transform, Koga seems like the best option to black out against. But that really isn't true. I am missing a major opportunity in this section of the game for 2 reasons. But I don't want to ruin the surprise for all of you. Keep thinking about it and see if you can come up with the solution for Ditto's mid-game. It's like a mystery story. I have laid down every seed that you need to figure it out right now. It is possible that with your current knowledge, you will be able to solve the problem yourself. Unfortunately, I did not solve the problem. I just kept grinding against Koga. Eventually, I was getting pretty frustrated, so I tried using rare candies before him just to see if a higher level would help. The problem is at level 73, Struggle is still not going to beat Koga. I only have 205 HP. That is 41 short of the threshold required. And even then, I would probably need more. I expect that the Venomoth is going to do damage to Ditto. I experimented with training inside of Diglett's Tunnel. This doesn't feel faster. Then I realized I can go to Sylph and do extra training here. Some of the trainers have long teams, so I want to avoid people like the Stacked Scientist. The Triantist is fine. The Hypno Rocket is also okay. This is one of the first trainers that got art on the channel, by the way, so it's nice to walk down memory lane and fight him in this video. My confidence was building from here, so I fought the Reception Rocket, who has 4 Pokemon, and I was able to defeat all of his team members. So I did fight the Stacked Scientist with 5 Pokemon, and I am able to get through his team. This experience feels so smooth to obtain after all of the blackouts to Koga. The Hypno Sandwich has probably the best art out of any trainer on my channel. I absolutely love this one. After finishing everyone in Sylph, including the Juggler that I so rarely battle, Ditto is halfway through level 71. I went back to Cycling Road, fought every single trainer here, and that got Ditto up to level 73. The only way forward now is beating the rival in Sylph or going back and beating Koga. I decided to take on the rival since I haven't tried him yet. With Struggle, I'm able to 2-shot the Sandslash, 2-shot the Cloyster, and then Magneton comes in. Unfortunately, it's taking more than 1 hit to knock out, and his team has too much HP. To defeat him with Struggle, my budget needs to be 235. It is theoretically lower than Koga, but the rival's Pokemon are able to attack Ditto. I went back to Koga, lost with Struggle, and then started using Transform. Sleep Powder puts the first Venonat to sleep. I can finish it off with Psychic followed by Tackle. The next one goes to sleep. Same story here. I have to repeat this process 3 times. I want to save as much Psychic PP as possible for the Venomoth. I knock out his 3rd Venonat, move on to the Venomoth. It chooses Leech Life. Venonat survives with red health. Sleep Powder puts the Venomoth to sleep, and then Psychic does roughly 1/3. So my second Psychic needs to get a critical hit because I have no more uses of tackle left over. I unfortunately do not get a critical hit, but the Venomoth is still snoozing. I have 5 uses of Toxic left. I start spamming them out. Venomoth continues sleeping. Koga uses an X attack. By the way, when he does this, it does not decrement the sleep counter, so he's essentially extending the Venomoth's sleep. This allows me to waste all of the turns of Toxic. I use Struggle, get a critical hit, and knock out Venomoth. My Ditto as Venonat survives with only 19 hit points, and finally clears the 5th gym leader, and I have earned the right to use Surf outside of battle. And there's only one experience I have in my entire life that felt like this moment with Ditto. So allow me to tell a short story. When I was going to university, I had to move all the way across Canada. My dad and I packed our minivan full of all of my earthly belongings and then drove them across the entire country. By the way, we had to do this. I was going to music school and there was no way to ship my instrument since it's very large. Anyway, after the incredibly boring drive across the prairies in Canada, which is basically just a bunch of flat land with nothing to see but farm fields, then we got to Ontario and we pulled into a little town called Kenora. There we tried to find a hotel to stay the night to continue our journey the next day. However, every single hotel room was booked. I really want to emphasize that we had been driving for like 14-15 hours at this point and we were so exhausted. The reason there was no hotel rooms is because they were all occupied by firefighters that were battling forest fires in the surrounding region. They suggested that maybe we should drive down the road a couple hours to Dryden and then try to find a hotel room there. So my dad, being exhausted from doing most of the driving so far, said, well, Scott, you have to drive. So I drove the rest of the way to Dryden until about 3 a.m. Turns out there were no hotel rooms there either because just like Kenora, there were forest fires in the region. So I ended up driving all the way to Thunder Bay while my dad slept in the passenger seat. We couldn't just sleep in the back of the van because it was packed full of stuff. I distinctly remember watching the sunrise, seeing a bunch of moose on highway signs, and being the only occupant on the road except for a whole bunch of semis. I genuinely thought I was going to fall asleep and die and never make it to university. But we pulled into Thunder Bay at around 7:30 a.m. I had not slept at this point. We went to Tim Hortons, the most Canadian thing we could do, got like a breakfast wrap and a coffee, and sitting at that tiny table with my dad, we were not talking. We were too exhausted. We looked at each other, and then I knew. Both of us were like, there is no way we are stopping now. We're not going to check into a hotel at 7:30 a.m. So we got back in the van and I continued driving. When I do solo challenges like this with Ditto, I feel a very similar way to how I was feeling on my way to Sault Ste. Marie. There is this sort of exhaustion that sets in from doing a repetitive task over and over again, where at some point you just have to say to your brain, like, just drive for 15 more seconds. Just play Ditto for 15 more seconds. And then the salt falls into your eyes and you're crying a little bit and you just look at the road and you go, it's probably been 15 seconds. I'm just going to drive 15 more seconds. And with Ditto, you're like, I'm just going to battle a few more Diglets. Just a few more Diglets. It's going to be okay. And then eventually you look over to your right-hand side, you see Lake Superior beside you, you decide to pull over and you run into the lake. This was one of the most refreshing experiences in my entire life. It didn't last long though. I had to get back in the van and continue driving. We pulled into Sault Ste. Marie around 5 p.m. I ordered a pizza, ate it all, and then went to sleep. With Ditto, it felt briefly refreshing to defeat Koga. But now, as you can see, I am suffering against Erica. After a few battles, I realized the best way to win here is just getting critical hits. If I can crit both the Weepinbell and the Gloom, then I should be able to win. It just takes some time, and eventually I am able to pull it off. Okay, time for some more refreshment. I'm gonna jump in the ocean this time and head south to Cinnabar Island, fighting a bunch of trainers on my way. I don't find driving nearly as exhausting as playing Pokemon solo challenges. While my dad and I did drive 30 hours straight, I only did about half of those hours, but I was awake for the entire period. Solo challenges, on the other hand, are incredibly demanding at every single moment. It feels like I'm driving on a racetrack, going like 250 miles an hour or something like that. I don't know if that's how fast race cars go. I know nothing about that kind of thing. I know about Pokemon solo challenges, and for this one, I am definitely going to need to go to the power plant to grab one more rare candy. I also spent some fun time in here, refreshing myself once again fighting Zapdos. Luckily, this goes well for Ditto and I earn myself a little bit of experience. Nice. Inside the Cinnabar Island gym, I fight all of the trainers for experience. This gets Ditto close to level 77, and then I take on Blaine. The health budget for this battle is not as high as it is for the rival or for Koga. I only need 218 to survive, but Blaine would also need to cooperate. Ninetales could go for Tail Whip, Rapidash could use Growl, and then Arcanine could go for Reflect over and over again or miss with Fire Blast or Takedown. If I get hit by Blaine's Pokemon though, they're doing tons of damage, and because of this, I'm less likely to win. If Rapidash goes for Growl, then it takes me more turns to knock out the Arcanine, giving it more chances to go for Takedown, Flamethrower, or Fire Blast. I think that Struggle might not be the correct choice here. Maybe Transform is better. Turning into the Ninetales is not good for my speed, I'm then slower than both the Rapidash and the Arcanine. But if the Ninetales goes for Tail Whip, it badge boosts me so that my speed is higher than both of them. I can use Confuse Ray and then Quick Attack to chip away at Blaine's Pokemon. I get a critical hit right away, inflicting massive damage, and then Ninetales knocks itself out. Now here, Ditto levels up to 77. I'm drawing your attention to this because when Ditto is transformed, it loses all of its badge boosts. But once you level up in the middle of a battle, all of your badge boosts are reapplied. However, you'll notice here that during this level up, my stats don't change. That's because I already had one badge boost from the Tail Whip from the Ninetales. Instead of losing that badge boost, I maintain it now because of the level up. This lets me outspeed the Rapidash, I confuse it, then I can go for Flamethrower. Rapidash just kind of falls apart. Arcanine comes in, I confuse it, it hits itself. I go for Quick Attack doing chip damage, it hits itself again. Alright, this is looking pretty good. I go for Quick Attack, more chip damage. Arcanine damages itself. I use Flamethrower, and it does enough damage. I was able to beat Blaine right away when using Transform. I only ended up losing to him once, which honestly is a bit surprising. He's usually a really strong gym leader in this game. Okay, so I'm exhausted. The only thing left to do though is go back and fight the rival. I have every single badge boost here. I also have PP for Transform, so let's see if I can beat him using Sand Slash. It has Sand Attack, Slash, Poison Sting, and Swift. Once I transform, I outspeed the Cloyster, but I underspeed Magneton, Kadabra, and Flareon. Luckily, Magneton's not going to be very effective against my ground type. Kadabra could do a lot of damage with Psybeam, but Flareon is also not particularly good. Its best move against Sandslash is probably Fire Spin. It's kind of funny to say that. Then I realized something though. Because I transformed into Sandslash, I have stolen its base speed, which is 64, exactly enough to always get critical hits with Slash. And if I always get critical hits with Slash, then I always use Ditto's stats. Because of this, using Slash, I can one-shot the Sandslash, one-shot the Cloyster, one-shot the Magneton, of course the Kadabra goes down. Flareon is last, it goes for Fire Spin, which does very little damage, and then Slash one-hits. This was an incredibly easy battle. To get by Jesse and James, I can transform into Weezing. This is actually not that bad. Sludge does a ton of damage, and I don't even need to deplete all of my PP. I just knock out the Arbok and then one-shot the Meowth. Now, the rival in Jesse and James might have been really easy, but Giovanni is not. If I'm using Transform here, which by the way, I really should be, Ditto going through this fight with Struggle is very unlikely because the Rhyhorn is going to resist your attacks. And Nidoqueen has Double Kick, which is super effective, and because of Giovanni's AI, he is always going to choose it if I stay as a Ditto. Instead, transforming into Nidorino gives me more options. I have Double Kick, which is super effective against Persian and Rhyhorn, but then I have Fury Attack for the Nidorino, and most importantly, the Nidoqueen. I could show you footage of this fight over and over again, me losing because it's really difficult. Fury Attack just loves to miss. What a frustrating move to have to use this far into a playthrough. I'm not going to waste your time though. Instead, I tried with Struggle. This doesn't work, as I mentioned before, and eventually I just had to come back and rely on critical hits with Fury Attack to knock out the Nidoqueen. I use up all the PP of Transform on wild Pokemon now, and then use Struggle for Sabrina. She's a breath of fresh air, a really easy gym battle in amongst everything else that Ditto's going through. One trainer I want to draw your attention to is the black belt that's mandatory inside Giovanni's gym. His Machoke, Machop, and Machoke all have high HP stats, so knocking them out actually does a lot of damage to Ditto using Struggle. By the way, here we get to see that Struggle is not bypassing accuracy checks because it Gen 1 misses against the Machop. I'm able to win this battle, but my health is fairly low, and I got lucky because the Machop didn't go for low kick on the turn that I didn't attack. I think that Ditto could have lost because of that Gen 1 miss. Okay, right before Giovanni, I'm going to use a PP restoring item. I think that this is one fight where it is so obvious that Transform is the correct solution. Dugtrio is first, and we can immediately transform into it, stealing Dig, Sand Attack, Fissure, and Earthquake. Dig and Earthquake are super effective against his 3 final Pokemon. They're going to do decent damage to the Persian. Dugtrio is also weak physically, and it has an incredible critical hit rate of 23%. So this transformation gives Ditto so much upside. There's a small amount of downside. I could get hit by Earthquake or Dig on turn 1 and take a lot of damage. I could also get hit by Sand Attack. In the case that Sand Attack lands, I think that resetting right away makes the most sense. Now, I am exhausted, and I told that story earlier for a purpose, not just to waste your time. It was to really emphasize how my brain is working at this point. I thought, I want to knock out the Persian as fast as possible to avoid double team, so I start spamming Fissure. Fissure does not work against targets that are faster than the user. Because I transformed into Dugtrio, I have 2 less speed than the Persian, and I am never going to be able to hit it with Fissure. So, whoops, this is a mistake. Persian sets up a bunch of double teams, then I can't hit with Earthquake, and Dugtrio loses. Now, I used the PP restoring item after saving, so I accidentally clicked on Giovanni and then fought him once with Struggle. Here is why this is not a good idea. Think about it. After you make it by the Persian, if you make it by the Persian, your health is going to be low, then you have to take on the Nidoqueen, the Nidoking, and the Rhydon. The health stats there are 166, 162, and 189. You would need 258 health remaining after knocking out the Persian in order to win with Struggle. So it has to be Dugtrio. And honestly, this solution is just really good. Dig one-shots Persian because I get a critical hit. Earthquake takes care of Nidoqueen with another critical hit. Earthquake one-shots Nidoking with a critical hit. And I move on to Rhydon, leveling up to 80 in the process. You'll see here that my badge boosts are reapplied, so my attack stat gets increased for his final Pokemon. I know Dugtrio is a critting machine, but instead I just went for Fissure, and I one-shot the Rhydon. Bye-bye Giovanni. The gym challenge is finished. Now Ditto is moving on to the final 6 trainers in the game. I'm sure I'm close to winning now. Just another like 45 minutes or so. There's no way that there are still hours left in the playthrough from here, right? How bad could the Elite Four really be? The rival is first though. In this case, he's not as easy as he was in Sylph, because transforming into Sandslash might give me Slash, but my level no longer allows me to one-shot a bunch of his Pokemon. Cloyster survives, which is really unfortunate. It has super effective damage with Clamp, and Ditto faints. I tried fighting the rival with Struggle, but no, it's not going to work. He has 6 Pokemon now, and that's important to recognize. All of the trainers at the end of the game have stacked teams, 5 or 6 Pokemon, and because of that, Ditto is not really going to be able to use Struggle anymore. Transform has to be the go-to option. The only way to make Struggle work would be using healing items during battle, but of course that's not allowed as per my rules. Then, in my exhausted stupor, the solution clicked. I need to go back to the Pokemon Center, deposit all of my HM users, and black out against the rival. I can repeat this battle over and over again as Sandslash and gain experience fairly quickly. Plus, eventually the Cloyster is going to go for Withdraw against Sandslash, and that'll be useless. And when that happens, I should be able to win. Even if it doesn't, it goes for Aurora Beam. I survive with decent health. One-shot the Magneton. Kadabra just goes for Reflect. Then Psybeam. I survive on 41 hit points and knock out the penultimate Pokemon with Swift. Flareon is last. It goes for Leer. I don't have Slash left over, so I have to continue using Swift. Because of the previous Leer, I now outspeed. I use Swift again, and this one gets a critical hit. Flareon faints, and Sandslash wins against the rival. That really didn't take that long. In Victory Road, don't fight the trainer who has Chansey. Terrible idea when you take recoil equal to half of the damage you deal. The Chansey has 274 HP. I was trying to do training in this section of the game, but still Ditto's level is not very high by the time I reach Indigo Plateau. And this is where things really slow down for me. We're not going to play Elite Four music right now. We're also not going to do the intro just yet. I did fight Lorelei just to experiment with how she would be. Using Struggle here is not going to work because she has so many Pokemon. Also, the Lapras has 220 HP. It's pretty bulky. If I can't use Struggle against her, I'm going to have to use Transform. And if I have to use Transform against her, then I'm not going to be able to use Struggle for the future members of the league. I could potentially deplete Transform's PP prior to going into Lorelei, use one use of it against her, and then have Struggle for the remaining trainers, but the Hiker is second. He has Rock Pokemon, so Struggle probably won't be good against him. And then we have Agatha, who we're still not going to talk about. Soon though, I promise. To beat Lorelei as a Dugong is not going to be fun. It has Bubble Beam, Aurora Beam, Rest, and Takedown. I guess I could crit every single one of her Pokemon with neutral Takedown, but then I take recoil equal to 1/4 of the total damage dealt, which is not great, and also Takedown has bad accuracy, so what's the chance that it crits every single turn? It didn't feel like the right choice to fight Lorelei at level 83 transforming, so instead I'm going to go back to Victory Road, fight a bunch of wild Pokemon and trainers, leveling up all the way to 88. This grinding took so long. I get to level level 86 at 5 hours and 44 minutes. I get to level 87 at 5 hours and 51 minutes. And finally, I reach level 88 at almost 6 hours, 5 hours and 58 minutes. I use 12 rare candies and boost Ditto to level 100. Now it's time for the Elite Four. I am going to cover the amount of health that you would take in recoil damage for every single Elite Four member, even though I won't be using Struggle during these trainers. For Lorelei, the health budget needs to be 417. You will take 416 damage in recoil, so you could critical hit every single one of her Pokemon, but you would need 417 HP. And Ditto at level 100 with perfect DVs and near perfect stat experience has 293 HP. So Struggle is not possible in this first battle. Right away I had to start figuring out which moves I'm going to use against which Pokemon. I think Takedown makes most sense on Dugong, then Bubble Beam for the Cloyster since its special is fairly low. For Slowbro, Takedown seems best. Jinx takes neutral damage from both Bubble Beam and Takedown. Obviously Takedown, if it still has PP left over, is going to be better, but Bubble Beam will also be okay. For Lapras, we don't really have good moves. I guess it has to be Takedown, but I think by that point in the fight I'm going to be using Struggle anyway. So I have to figure out where I'm going to spam out Rest. It makes no sense to do this early into the battle because I need the healing for later into the fight. On Slowbro, taking extra time with Rest isn't going to be a good idea because it has Amnesia. Since I have transformed into a Water Ice type, Slowbro is going to view both Surf and Withdraw as not very effective. It will only ever use Psychic and Amnesia. On turn 2, it's always going to set up with Amnesia, and then if it uses Psychic after that, it's going to do a lot of damage to Dugong. This is why I don't think Rest against Slowbro is viable. That leaves me with Rest against either the Jinx or the Lapras. Cloyster's also too early into the battle. Now I can't believe it, but I actually make it to the Jinx. This happened very quickly. Unfortunately, it's faster than Ditto Dugong, puts Ditto Dugong to sleep, and then uses Thrash while my Ditto sleeps, and eventually Jinx gets the knockout. Okay, so the strategy here is fairly obvious. I want to critical hit the Dugong, knocking it out in 1 turn. I want to critical hit the Cloyster, knocking it out in 2 turns with Bubble Beam. Yes, even with a crit, this move has to 2-shot. If I can do that, then I can move on to the Slowbro and hopefully knock it out with 1 turn of Takedown. But if I run out of Takedown PP, then I can use Aurora Beam here or Bubble Beam to knock it out. Aurora Beam feels better to me, and if I get critical hits, it speeds up my progress. A lot of battles end here though, and I did try to use Rest in this case to heal. This is not the right choice. I think you just go for it here against the Slowbro. If you lose, you lose. Don't waste time with Rest. And I am going to lose to the Slowbro a lot. Although, I do want to mention here that it crits me. When Slowbro crits, whatever stage modifiers Ditto has will not apply. And they could be negative here because Slowbro can drop special with Psychic. And also, Slowbro's crit applies to Ditto's stats, not to Dugong's stats. So it's actually an advantage when the enemy Pokemon are critting at this point in the run. Okay, look at how much damage a critical hit Bubble Beam does against the Slowbro. It takes it from green health to nothing. I move on to the Jinx for a second time. It's going for Thrash, but this time I'm able to heal here using Rest. Then I start using Aurora Beam. I thought that maybe if I could drop its attack, it would do less damage with Thrash, making Rest a little bit more reliable to heal with. Also, I'm realizing here that I need to spam out Rest before I get to the Lapras. I'm gonna have to knock out Lorelei's final Pokemon using Struggle. I saved 1 turn of Rest before knocking out the Jinx. This way I can heal on the Lapras and then I have maximum health to knock it out. Because of type effectiveness, it's going for either Body Slam or Confuse Ray. Getting paralyzed and confused at the same time is quite frustrating. I thought that I was going to pull this off. Unfortunately for me, Ditto Dugong knocks itself out when it defeats the Lapras. Self-inflicted confusion damage is to blame here. If Ditto had just hit itself 1 less time, I think I would have pulled through. Sometimes though, the battle against Lorelei goes very well. Takedown crits the Dugong in 1 hit. That's only 1 PP used so far. Then the Cloyster goes for Spike Cannon, getting a critical hit. Bubble Beam does not crit, but it doesn't matter because I can 3-shot even without the critical hit. Against Slowbro, I continue using Bubble Beam because I don't really want this move for later Pokemon. Eventually though, I do knock it out, move on to the Jinx with low health. I heal with Rest, get hit by Lovely Kiss. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens here. Overall, it's not important. Eventually, I just use Takedown, knock out the Jinx, and move on to the Lapras. I have saved 5 uses of Aurora Beam for this Pokemon. I can lower its attack so that Body Slam is doing less and less damage. I also have 3 uses of Rest left over and 1 use of Takedown. I'm really hoping that Takedown is going to critical hit. I'm I'm able to bring the Lapras to -2 attack, then I go for takedown, it doesn't do the damage needed, but I can rest up, and eventually I start using Struggle, and I have enough health this time to finish off Lorelei's final Pokemon. By the way, this is a 6 hour and 14 minute Lorelei split. If you look in the bottom right, you'll see that Lorelei is clocked in at 6 hours, 8 minutes, and 58 seconds. The reason is I got the split when I knocked myself out with Struggle. I'm not going to count that obviously as the official time. This is just an edge case that I never programmed around with my overlay, and I'm realizing that it's an issue now. By the way, some of the previous splits have also had this problem. Okay, so the hiker, but today, unfortunately, he is going to regain his official name. This is Bruno, and he is actually kind of difficult for Ditto. Not because Ditto is a bad Pokemon, but because transforming into Onix is not good. Do notice that I only have Struggle for this battle. It's because I went into Lorelei with 1 PP of Transform just to test if Struggle would be the best choice here. If I had Foresight though and did some math, I would have realized that this is not the right choice. My total budget here would need to be 330 HP, and that's not possible for Ditto. Starting the next fight, you'll notice that Transform only has 2 PP. The reason is I used a PP up. This way I can go back to Struggle if I want to use it later during the league. I think it's a neat thing to talk about, but it's not relevant since all of the trainers from here have too much HP for Ditto to get through them realistically. Transform has to be the solution. For Bruno, that means we have Rock Slide, Screech, Slam, and Dig. We're also a Rock Ground type, meaning I will take super effective damage from the Hitmonchan's Ice Punch, as well as from all of the Fighting type moves. There are only 3 though, don't worry. Double Kick and High Jump Kick on Hitmonlee, and Submission on Machamp. This fight feels a little bit messier than the battle against Lorelei. Screech only has 85% accuracy. Bruno can use X-Defense on each one of his Pokemon. He can use 2 of them, which is really unfortunate. Dig might be super effective against both Onix, but since I speed tie the first one, I can get messed up and use Digs without doing any damage. This occurs when his Onix is underground whenever I'm trying to attack, and because of the speed tie, I can't anticipate when I should be using Dig. I just need to go for it and cross my fingers. I figured out fairly quickly that on the Hitmonchan, I don't want to be using Dig. Its special stat is so low that I can tank hits from Ice Punch. Bruno also does not have good AI, so he's going to randomize his moves. This means Hitmonchan can go for Thunder Punch against Onix, which is hilarious. It can also freeze with Ice Punch and then defrost Onix by using Fire Punch. The best choice here is 1 turn of Screech followed by 2 slams for the knockout. Hitmonlee is much more dangerous, so I think Screech followed by Dig is the better play. What I'm hoping for is that it goes for Mega Kick and I just shrug off the normal type damage. If it goes for High Jump Kick and it gets a critical hit, then it does more than half to Onix. And if I don't use Screech prior to using Dig, then I won't one-shot, which means I have to fall back to using moves like Rock Slide or Slam. Sometimes Fire Punch can be a blessing, but other times it can burn Onix, and in this case my attack stat is cut. This is not good. Look at the damage I do to Hitmonlee with Slam. Yeah, I'm just not going to be able to win if I get hit by this status condition. X-Defense and Missing are the 2 primary ways that I'm going to lose this battle. If I run out of PP on Dig before I reach the second Onix, there's basically no way for me to win. Sometimes the beginning of the battle goes badly, forcing me to use moves like Slam or Rock Slide against the Hitmonlee. In cases like this, I should be resetting right away to save time. Oh, by the way, both fault metrics are now in the triple digits. 106 resets and 140 blackouts. Here's how the win comes together for Ditto. I can use 2 Digs to knock out the first Onix. Then against Hitmonchan, I'm going to use Screeches until it's at -2 defense. He did use an X-Defend here, so I went for 1 more Screech and then slammed 2 shots. Hitmonlee is next. I got lucky with a critical hit from Slam one-shotting, saving 3 PP of Dig for the final Pokemon. Screech once, then Dig on the second Onix to knock out in 1 turn. I got a lucky critical hit, but it didn't matter. Here are the damage ranges for Bruno with Transform. All of his Pokemon after 1 Screech are a 1-hit with the exception of Machamp. It still takes 2 hits from Dig, unless I get a critical hit. But in this case, I have retained 2 PP of Dig for the final Pokemon, and using both of them, I finish off Bruno's ace. Okay, so it's been fun. I've had a great time playing Ditto. I am completely exhausted. There are only 3 trainers left. Sadly for me, the most difficult battle in the entire run is next. Agatha is agonizing. In a Generation 2 world where Struggle deals typeless damage, well, not really, but kind of, just go with it for the sake of this example. In that world, if recoil was still 50%, then I would need 360 HP to win against her with Struggle. But that's not the world we're in. We can't do any damage to the ghost Pokemon using Struggle. So there is only one viable option here, transforming into the Gengar. This is pretty nice. It gives outspeeds on Golbat, Haunter, and Arbok, but I am still slower than the final Gengar. Also, the final Gengar has Psychic, which is super effective against my now Ghost Poison type. The problem comes down to moveset here. The first Gengar has Confuse Ray, Substitute, Lick, and Mega Drain. 5 PP of a grass move that has a base power of 40 against a team of poison types. This is really not a good move to have to use. Also, Substitute doesn't do any damage, Confuse Ray is unreliable, and Lick is essentially our only damage against ghost types. Mega Drain does work, but it's really bad. You're gonna realize very quickly what the problem is here once I show you the damage ranges. Lick does between 36 and 42% damage to the first Gengar. It does between 50 and 60% to the Haunter, and between 30 and 36% to the final Gengar. By the way, during my Mew race, some of the contestants did novelty runs using only Transform. An example of this would be Krukinari's footage, which unfortunately I neglected to find in my inbox because of the different submission methods that people were using to give me the footage at the end of the race. There were a bunch of logistical problems. I know that some people didn't have their footage included, and I missed some footage, so I want to apologize to everyone who was affected by these scenarios. Luckily, in Krukinari's position, I'm able to mention their run right now because they did Transform only, and when Mew is fighting Agatha, even if Mew only has Transform, it's in the exact same scenario that Ditto is. The only difference is that when Mew critical hits, it's going to do a lot more damage. Here with Ditto, whenever I critical hit, I have just enough damage. I can one-shot the first Gengar, I can one-shot the final Gengar, and I can two-shot the Haunter or one-shot. The ideal scenario here against Agatha is we critical hit the first Gengar, we critical hit the Haunter, and we critical hit the final Gengar. If I pull off those 3 feats, then I can use Lick twice against either the Golbat or the Arbok, and I can use Mega Drain with Confuse Ray followed by Struggle to knock out those 2 Pokemon. The issue is team order. I can't use Struggle before I knock out the final Gengar. We are lucky here though, because Agatha has an AI modification that forces her to switch Pokemon sometimes. It's really random, but eventually she will swap out her Arbok and send in the final Gengar, allowing me to knock it out with Lick before I use Struggle, and then the last resort move can be used to finish off the Arbok. I am so glad that she can switch her Pokemon. If she couldn't, this fight would almost be impossible. As I talk, I'm going to continue rolling the footage, and I'm going to talk about the learning that I was doing during this process. Slowly but surely, I came to the realization that the first Gengar is critical. Literally. I have to crit it. If I don't, then I use too many PP of Lick early into the battle, and I don't want to have to rely on critical hits for every single ghost. I want to be able to two-shot the Haunter with Lick, and then crit the final Gengar getting a one-hit. For the Golbat, I have to alternate between Confuse Ray and Substitute. Substitute to buy time, Confuse Ray to do damage. I can also chip away here with Mega Drain, but I have to be really careful. If Golbat drops below 25% health and Agatha uses a Super Potion, I basically lose. The ideal scenario is getting it around 25%, just above that, and then go for Lick, have Golbat damage itself with Confusion, and move on. There is some risk against the Haunter. It can go for Hypnosis and it can lose the fight as a result, but Confuse Ray, Lick, and Dream Eater won't do anything since in most cases I'm going to have my substitute for this part of the fight. Against Arbok, there are even more weird mechanics at play. It can go for Glare, which bypasses Substitute to paralyze, but it can also use Wrap. You would think that this does nothing to a Ghost-type Pokemon, and that is kind of correct. It does no damage, but it still plays the Wrap animation and increments the turns. This is very good for Gengar, because every time she uses Wrap, every turn she has a chance to switch in her Gengar. So what I really want to have happen against the Arbok is for it to go for Wrap over and over again, wasting a bunch of turns, preventing my Ditto from attacking and wasting PP. If she swaps in Gengar, then I hopefully get the critical hit, Arbok comes back out, and I finish the fight. One thing I do want to draw your attention to is that Ditto's health doesn't matter in this fight. It's kind of weird. The reason you lose is because you run out of PP and Struggle can't do anything. It is almost never the case that Agatha is defeating Ditto because she's doing enough damage. I can lose to status conditions, Glare, Hypnosis, and Confuse Ray or Supersonic. Sometimes these do afflict Ditto because it loses its substitute and has no more PP because I've tried to buy time for Confuse Ray. Interestingly enough here, the Pokemon on Agatha's team that feel the worst are the Golbat and the Arbok. For Golbat, you're just hoping that Confuse Ray does enough damage, and for Arbok, you're just hoping that Agatha is gonna switch. I have said before that the word lottery is not a good word to describe this battle in Pokemon Yellow. It's a lot more fitting for someone like J-Rose in Pokemon Red and Blue. But here in Yellow version with tools like Mimic and Substitute, it's a lot more consistent. That said, today with Ditto, I do think that this is the Agatha lottery. It is so rare that I make it to the final Gengar. I mean so rare. And when I do, I have a roughly 21% chance to crit it. In this case, after almost 6 hours and 48 minutes of time, I make it to the Gengar and I have 1 PP left of Lick. Gengar misses Hypnosis, I go for Lick and it doesn't get a critical hit. So I have to reset because Struggle can't do damage to ghosts. Now sometimes during this fight, everything just goes according to plan. I critical hit the first Gengar with my first Lick. Against Golbat, there is another downside. If I use Confuse Ray and then Agatha switches her Pokemon, the status condition gets healed when Golbat comes back in. This is another way that I can lose this battle. In this case though, I critical hit the Haunter that follows with Lick, so I have 3 PP left for the final Gengar. I think this is the ideal scenario, provided I'm able to make it by the Golbat and the Arbok. Golbat does a ton of damage to itself in Confusion, and I finish with my final PP of Mega Drain. Arbok comes in next, and I am in a fantastic position here. 2 uses of Confuse Ray, 3 uses of Substitute, and 3 uses of Lick. I could not have asked for a better scenario. Unfortunately, Arbok makes things worse. It paralyzes right away. I burn through my Confuse Rays and then spam out Substitute. But before I use the last 2, she switches in Gengar. Okay, please, this has to be it. I'm getting chills all over my body right now. Even just watching this footage back is incredibly emotional for me. Lick does about a third. Gengar goes for Dream Eater. By the way, that would be terrifying if it went for Hypnosis followed by Dream Eater and got health back. That would even have the potential to ruin a situation like this. So the glare from the Arbok is actually working in my advantage. I hit with a third Lick, knock out the Gengar, move on to Arbok, spam out the final use of Substitute, and then struggle my way through Agatha's final team member. Ditto gets an Agatha split of 6 hours, 51 minutes, and 31 seconds. It took me nearly 30 minutes to beat her after defeating Bruno, and I think that 30 minutes is pretty good. That could have taken much longer, and believe me, it will. But for now, I'm moving on to Lance. Of all of the Elite Four members, this one is by far the most straightforward. After transforming into Gyarados, I can use Dragon Rage and Hyper Beam to knock it out. Hyper Beam has enough damage to one-shot both Dragonairs, and then Hydro Pump is great for the Aerodactyl. The only problem in this entire battle is the Dragonite. Number 1, it outspeeds, and number 2, it has Thunder. Interestingly enough, Thunder does not one-shot Ditto Gyarados because of Ditto's high HP stat. The problem is, for all intents and purposes, Thunder usually does one-shot, and Hyper Beam doesn't have enough damage to one-hit the Dragonite. So even if it misses Thunder, it's still gonna survive, and in Generation 1, Hyper Beam must recharge if you don't knock out the enemy's Pokemon. But if you do knock out, you don't have to recharge. This is why Ditto Gyarados is so good at making it by Lance's first 4 Pokemon. Now, one advantage I have in this fight is that the first Gyarados can go for Leer against my Ditto. If this happens, it badge boosts my Ditto Gyarados' speed to the point that it outspeeds the Dragonite. Then I can move first, and I also have additional damage. The ideal play here is getting hit by 1 Leer on the Gyarados, sweeping through the remainder of Lance's Pokemon with as much health as possible. Then against Dragonite, Dragon Rage on turn 1 for some damage, Dragonite must miss 1 Thunder, and then Hyper Beam will get the knockout. There is an alternative here, just critical hitting the Dragonite, but this isn't as good. Gyarados has a 16% chance to crit and a 10% chance to miss with Hyper Beam, whereas Dragonite has a 30% chance to miss with Thunder. So relying on the miss from Thunder and the reliability of Dragon Rage on turn 1 is more solid. I think that I got fundamentally unlucky here against Lance. The Dragonite hit so many times in a row with Thunder, it was a bit absurd. But eventually it missed twice in a row. I accidentally used Hyper Beam right away instead of Dragon Rage. In this case, I'm able to use Hyper Beam, recharge, and then Dragon Rage for the knockout. Okay, we have just passed the 7-hour mark. Is the champion going to be absolutely brutal for Ditto? In most playthroughs of Yellow version, he is the most difficult trainer. With no way to deplete my PP, and no hope of winning with Struggle because of his HP stats, I have to transform into Sandslash. For this fight, it has Slash, Poison Sting, Earthquake, and Fury swipes. It's not going to do much damage to my Ditto Sandslash, which is great, and I can use Slash for critical hits here, but they're not able to one-shot his lead. I have to 2-hit, I move on to the Alakazam with half health. It goes for Psybeam, bringing me down to low orange health. I knock it out with a single Slash, move on to Executor, but this bulky Pokemon also is able to survive. However, because of good AI, it's only ever going to choose Leech Seed. This could get annoying later into the fight, but for now it's okay. Magneton is next. Okay, I'm actually a ground type here. I have Earthquake, and I can one-shot. I even get badge boosted by Screech. However, things then go downhill. Cloyster is next. I misclick on Fury Swipes because I am so tired. It does almost no damage despite hitting 5 times in a row. Leech Seed wastes some time and some health, and then Cloyster goes for Aurora Beam and Ditto Sandslash Feints. I'm able to make it back to the Cloyster, but without a badge boost, it's faster and uses Ice Beam. Sometimes I can lose to the Alakazam, Psychic does massive damage, and Psybeam confuses in this case. Sandslash does damage to itself, and then Psychic gets the knockout. Okay, so let's go through this. I can 2-shot the Sandslash, 1-shot the Alakazam, but there is downside for Kinesis, Psychic, or Psybeam. Executor is kind of irrelevant. Magneton can badge boost me, which is helpful. I could also buy time against it with Poison Sting or Fury Swipes and hope that it uses Screech. I think that this is probably the best way to play right now to get the speed I need for the Cloyster, but I hadn't quite clued into that being the solution yet. Instead, I just use Earthquake and knock it out. Cloyster comes in, and I don't really have a hope here other than maybe Clamp missing. Well, Cloyster goes for Aurora Beam, Sandslash survives the critical hit, I will mention. Slash does more than half, Leech Seed drains health. I have run out of Slash PP at this point, so I have to use Earthquake. Clamp misses, Sandslash hits with Earthquake, gets a critical hit and knocks out Cloyster. So Flareon is all that's left, but it has Quick Attack and it goes for it, but Ditto hangs on with 12 hit points. Earthquake lands and Flareon faints. I have done it. I have beaten Pokemon Yellow using only a Ditto. It took me 7 hours, 5 minutes, and 38 seconds. I had 165 resets, 140 blackouts. I finished the game at level 100 with a game time of 21 hours and 36 minutes. So that's it, Ditto is done, and as expected, this Pokemon is worse than Abra when doing a playthrough of Yellow version. Abra's time of 4 hours, 2 minutes, and 46 seconds is just going to be unrivaled by Ditto. Its first playthrough result is more than 3 hours slower than Abra, and I just don't see the ways that we could get Ditto's time even close to the 4-hour mark. So I'm going to call it here today. We're going to rank Ditto as the last Pokemon in the tier list that can beat the game. Okay, job's done. I can just dust off my hands and pick up the controller and play Mewtwo now, crushing in the game in probably what's going to be a 35-minute or less time. I'm pretty sure that Mewtwo is going to beat Mew. It should have no problems. There's no reason to do another Ditto playthrough. Let's just move on along. I don't want to go through all of that suffering again. You know, these solo challenges have consumed me. The stress to push for lower and lower times has probably shortened my life, and this desire has probably poisoned my mind. I am ready to move on. So I acknowledged a job well done, sat back, peace returned into my world, but then rumor grew of a shadowy player on Discord, whispers of a ridiculous time, and Ditto perceived that its time had come. I guess that peace is going to abandon me. I need to come back and play another run with Ditto, because Red Ryosi started to mention that Ditto is better than Abra in Pokemon Yellow. And when I first heard this, I thought that there was no way that it could be possible. But then after my first playthrough, I sat down, read through all of his notes, and realized, you know, Ditto might just be able to pull it off. Maybe, just maybe, this weird Gimmickmon has the chance of getting a time that is under 4 hours. Okay, so let's try to do it. I'm looking for a more than 3-hour improvement in run number 2 over run number 1. And in order to pull that off, I'm going to have to do a lot of things much better. I'm not going to say perfectly. Perfect is something that won't be obtainable during this playthrough. After all, my intent with Ditto is to only do 2 runs. When describing my first playthrough, I mentioned that there was a critical mistake that I made early into the game, and that is winning the rival battle for experience. I thought that leveling up as fast as possible to defeat Brock was going to be critical for Ditto's time. After all, so many Pokemon, especially normal types, lose an incredible amount of time during the first split, and that dramatically impacts their results. But this is not true for Ditto. Its playthrough is so long that the time lost at Brock is not so substantial that it's going to impact the final result. And there is a major advantage to losing this battle. The rival is going to evolve his Eevee into Vaporeon instead of Flareon. The obvious advantage that this has is that the champion isn't going to have Cloyster. We just saw that I have to face him as a Sandslash, and Cloyster is really annoying. However, of the late game battles, the champion is probably the easiest, so it doesn't seem like this is solving very much. Wouldn't it just be a bigger advantage to have the Brock split? Well, I think so in the case that Cloyster is the only change, but facing Vaporeon gives Ditto a massive advantage in this playthrough, but we're gonna have to wait till later to talk about it. Sometimes you have to restart this playthrough in order to lose the lab battle. This occurs when the Eevee goes for Tail Whip too many times in a row and doesn't knock Ditto out. Then you can run out of Tail Whip PP and you have to attack the Eevee. One way to make this slightly more likely is attacking with Tap tackle a few times early into the fight when its defense hasn't been lowered, then using Tail Whip to extend the duration of the battle so that the Eevee is more likely to knock Ditto out. Of course, this wastes more time though. I could be hyper precise and try to get the best possible rival split, but I know that there is going to be so much mess during this run, it is far more important to just finish the playthrough. So a slightly suboptimal rival is fine. As long as I'm not beating him, I'm happy to continue with this run. Now, let's talk about the major ways that we can make Brock so much faster than he was in the first playthrough. Last time around, I fought the bug catcher inside of Viridian Forest and did blackout training against him, but this is definitely not the best place to train in the early game. After delivering Professor Oak's parcel, I return to Viridian City and I immediately heal in the Pokemon Center. This is to set my waypoint here. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, so I go to the Pokemart and buy potions with my Pokedollars. Now, what trainer is closer to the Pokemon Center that I can blackout against? Many of you are going to think of the bug catcher just inside of Viridian Forest, the guy with 2 Caterpie, but that's not the correct option. Instead, I'm going to go to Route 22 and fight the rival. Ditto can transform into his level 9 Spearow, which improves all of its stats. Then it can use Peck to knock out the Spearow in only 4 turns. Sometimes this goes badly and the Spearow goes for too many turns of Peck, but in other cases it just goes for Growl and Leer and gives me the time I need to win. Knocking out just this one Pokemon will level Ditto up from 5 to 6 right away. I then simply lose to the Eevee and blackout, returning to Viridian City. The walk back over to the rival is very short and this blackout training is incredibly efficient. It gets even more efficient once Ditto reaches level 8 because then it goes over a damage rounding threshold and instead of 4 hitting the Spearow, it starts 3 hitting. At this point in the battle I do have a choice. I can win here if I really try for it. Using Leer on his Eevee if I haven't been hit by Growls, I will be able to knock it out with my 2 remaining Pecks. I can also choose to extend my training here, and I think that that is the best way to play. I want about level 10 or 11 to fight the mandatory bug catcher inside of Viridian Forest, and the additional health is also going to help fighting the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym. Plus, in my experience, it's a little bit difficult to beat this rival consistently. Even if I'm shooting for it, sometimes I do just reach level 11 before I'm able to pull it off. Unfortunately for this run, I didn't even get to level 10, so I just decided to restart the playthrough from here. By the way, I restarted here multiple times, and it's not always for the same reason. You either defeat the rival unintentionally at a low level, and then you don't want to proceed with the run, or you black out too many times to the Spearow that you're just wasting time not getting any experience. What I really wanted here was a level 10 or 11 finish against the rival, with no experience-less blackouts. Unfortunately, I did have one along the way, and this is a good opportunity for me to explain. This playthrough is not going to be optimal. There will be small suboptimal things that I do along the way. I'm going to try to call them out like I am here, just so you can get the full context for this run. The reason I'm doing this is just so that you know that Ditto can go even faster than what I'm going to demonstrate in this video, or at least what I am going to try to demonstrate in this video. Inside Viridian Forest, I pick up every potion available to me. I want the maximum number of these items, and note, now that I understand how the blackout training works in the early game, I don't really have to use potions to train here before Brock, which is a major advantage. Notice that I did save before the mandatory bug catcher. This is not required, and I think that you should skip this save to save 4 seconds. There is the possibility for Ditto to speed this fight up should it get critical hits with Tackle. Then I'm going to be able to knock out the Caterpie much more quickly, because I won't have to spam out 5 uses of String Shot before using Struggle for the KO. If I don't get critical hits, then that's how I have to play. Heal in Pewter City to set the waypoint. Unlike in Generation 2, you can't just jump inside of the Pokemon Center and then leave to set the waypoint. You do have to fully heal. Inside the Mart, I can buy 1 more potion because of the money I've earned, and then I begin blackout training against the junior trainer. During my first fight, there's a great example. I get a critical hit against the Sandshrew, which does massive damage. This is very scary. It is possible for Diglett Ditto to knock out the Sandshrew and win this fight at a ridiculously low level. Before 13, it is incredibly unlikely. At 13, it becomes more likely, and then at 15, it becomes very likely. For maximum speed and efficiency in the early game, the best way to play at level 13 is walking right back to the junior trainer, battling him again, playing this like a man, and just hoping that you don't win. If you do want to play slightly safer and sacrifice some time as a result, just battle 1 wild Pokemon before returning to the junior trainer. What this does is it gives Ditto a little bit more experience, which isn't really that relevant, but it allows the wild Pokemon to do some damage to Ditto. This way, when you make it back to the Sandshrew, your health is going to be so much lower, and even if you get multiple critical hits, you're not going to knock it out. In this playthrough, I am objectively making a mistake at level 15 though. There isn't really a choice by this point because the junior trainer is the fastest fastest way to train in the early game. You don't want to defeat him. So battling wild Pokemon now is the correct choice. I'm not doing that, and as a result I defeat his Sandshrew and I have to go back to training in the forest. All of this is very inefficient and I have to use potions to do the training with struggle. This is going to make everything after this point in the game absolutely brutal. I don't want to cover exactly what I did here since it is a suboptimal strategy. The only thing I will say is that if you get stuck in this situation, do battle trainers, but Ditto only needs level 18 to defeat Brock, so I don't really have to do additional blackout training here. I could potentially lose over and over again to this bug catcher if I wanted to get to level 20 for an even easier Brock, but that's not going to be required. So Brock, level 18 with struggle, 7 to 9 damage against Geodude and 5 to 6 damage against Onix. That's a 4 hit on Geodude and a 6 to 7 hit on Onix. The win condition here for Ditto is just the Onix going for Screech, missing with Bind, or using Tackle at the wrong times. If it goes for Bide early into the battle, then I'm going to lose. Resetting here is not that costly, and you can see right now that I am roughly 20 minutes ahead of my previous Brock split. I get a bunch of resets. It ends up being fine though, because I come in 19 minutes and 22 seconds faster in the first split. I put myself in an awful position here because I don't have very many potions for Route 3. Just enough to make it to Mount Moon, pick up the HP up and a bunch of other items, then I can use the escape rope, which takes me back to Pewter City, and I can sell all of these items for a bunch more potions. But this is definitely not the best way to play this part of the game. I have now created myself another really awful barrier in Mount Moon. The Super Nerd is terrible for Ditto to defeat. If his Pokemon do 0 damage to my Ditto, then I need 54 HP to win. And right now at level 19, my Ditto has 55 HP. If I want to train to a higher level, then I need to allocate potions to that training. But I don't have spare potions that I want to use for training right now. So I have to take a bunch of resets here to defeat this trainer. And he's not good to blackout against because the walk to get here is so long. And using Transform and turning into Grimer is not a great idea. Jesse and James are also awful. I need 55 health to win here. Luckily Ditto has leveled up to 20, so it has 58 now. That is still not a lot of HP to spare, and I get punished because of this. Now there is an alternative to win here. I could transform into the Ekans, use Rapaleer and Poison Sting to make it through their team. It's not the worst idea in the world. I actually think it's better than what I did. Here I just wasted a bunch of time before I made it to Cerulean City. Redriosia and I discussed this section of the game because the training here is not very efficient. Fighting the rival gives you upside of getting experience from Spearow, Sandshrew, and Rattata, and sometimes winning and then getting all of the experience from Route 24 and 25. Fighting Misty only gives you the upside of beating the Staryu and the Starmie and then fighting the rival. And making it to Bill's house and returning to Misty makes her significantly more consistent for Ditto. For this reason, Redriosi leaned towards battling the rival, so I decided to go for that as my choice here. This battle can be awful. You can just black out here so many times, and in this playthrough I did not get good luck. It's also worth mentioning that the fact that I had to conserve my potions during the Mount Moon portion of the game means that my Ditto is a lower level than it otherwise would be at this point in the run. Because of that, I am suffering more during this section of the game, which makes the training slow down even more here. In the context of the entire playthrough, I think this is one of the slowest moments for Ditto to train. Eventually Ditto defeats the rival, and I am 19 minutes and 42 seconds ahead during this split. But look at the ordering of the splits. Last time I beat Misty first, so I have lost time in this section of the playthrough in comparison with my Brock split. I need to go back to the wild, spam out Transform PP, and then continue with Route 24 and 25 using Struggle. Okay, options for beating Misty. You can do it with Struggle, but you can also just do it with Transform. I personally prefer every single solution that involves blackouts. So Struggle first, see if it works. If it doesn't, then start using Transform. With Misty defeated, we still don't have an accurate sense for where I am in comparison with my first run. We're gonna have to wait until Surge. Here's the problem though. I'm using potions, I'm healing, I'm fighting trainers, I'm trying to rebuy potions, and by the time I reach the SSN, I'm almost level 33 and my HP stat is 89. I need to have 95 HP in order to win against the rival using Struggle. In order to get to that threshold, I needed to use the HP up inside of Mount Moon instead of selling it. So my mistake early on, not fighting wild Pokemon before the junior trainer, has now fully sabotaged this run. If I fight trainers to level up more and use Struggle against the rival, I am going to run out of potions, and because of that, I decided to restart here after a full hour of playtime with Ditto. This was incredibly painful, and I almost gave up entirely on doing a second run with Ditto here because I had wasted so much time. I'm on a schedule, you know, and we have to finish Mewtwo by the end of the year, plus I don't want Ditto to be the final video in Pokemon Yellow. To make all of those things happen, I do have to budget my time, and I thought I had run out because I only had 1 day of time allocated for this Ditto playthrough. It was midday by the time I had lost this first run, and I did decide to go back in and do another one, which would take me about to dinner time if I get the optimal result. However, I do not get the optimal result. In the next playthrough after leveling to 11 on the rival on Route 22, I fight the mandatory bug catcher and lose against his Caterpie. Yes, this kind of thing can happen. I still don't think that the save is the correct way to play, but now I just lost another 7 minutes of time. I came back in, fought the junior trainer at level 14, got really lucky and defeated him. Whoa, so this is actually unlucky. Because of that, I restarted the playthrough again, losing 12 minutes of time. I lost to the rival blacking out without experience, so I restarted again, 4 more minutes of time. This kept happening, so I restarted losing 2 more minutes. 4 more minutes, roughly 10 more seconds because I'm tilted now and I'm even making mistakes during the intro. The time pressure is really building. I need to get this run done. Remember when I told that long extended story about my travels with my father? Yeah, it was for a reason. You know when I said that I was tired after defeating Koga and I just really needed to rest? It was like us driving into Kenora in Northern Ontario and trying to find a hotel room. Yeah, we were tired, but we didn't realize just how long we still had to go without sleeping. I have not made it to my Lake Superior yet. There is not time to rest. I need to keep grinding to try to get this second Ditto run done. Knowing that I need to get a run done now, I decided to play the slightly suboptimal strategy of fighting wild Pokemon starting at level 13. This allows Ditto to extend its training for a ridiculous amount of time. Essentially infinite, I can fight this junior trainer until I'm ready to battle Brock. Then I am able to defeat Brock with only 2 resets, and I come in 21 minutes and 57 seconds faster than my first playthrough. So this is a big improvement over my second Brock split. This time my result is 23 minutes and 18 seconds. I think that most of you before watching this video would think that that kind of Brock split would be impossible with Ditto. I know that I did before I consulted Red Ryosi, and it is worth noting I was doing suboptimal training here, so Ditto can go faster in this section of the game. Now that I have potions, I can play much more optimally in the next section of the game, but I still suffer against Jesse and James. I have another solution for this, which I'll talk about a little bit later. For now, I just struggle through and it causes a ridiculous number of resets. And I mean a ridiculous number. We started this fight with 4, and I go all the way up to 18 before I make it to Cerulean City. I've already gone through this section of the game. We're going to skip all of it now and head to the SSN. 2 choices here. Fight the rival at level 34 or 35, so you have enough health to win against his team using Struggle. Or simply use Transform at a lower level, turn into Spearow, and then defeat the rival. You can also Blackout Train here by healing in the Vermilion City Pokemon Center and then walking back onto the SSN. I personally don't really like this option that much, but I beat the rival on my first attempt with Transform, and then I crushed Surge immediately after him. Okay, mid-game Ditto. We have 3 paths available to us now. Number 1, fight the rival in Pokemon Tower and use Transform. This can be pulled off at level 39, resetting badge boosts when you level up after defeating the Fearow. If we want to use Struggle, the lowest possible level to do this is 50, and we have to use a bunch of HP ups in this section of the game to have enough health in order to do that. If Ditto doesn't get HP ups, then it needs level 52 or 53, and we saw me execute that strategy during my first playthrough. I don't think that it's the correct choice, and I also don't think the level 50 strategy is correct either. Fighting the rival at 39 when I was level 31 for the rival on the SSN is so much cleaner. I don't need to do nearly as much training in this section of the game, and the NPCs that I have available to me without completing Pokemon Tower are just not very good for experience yields. So minimizing training here is really going to accelerate Ditto's pace. The issue with doing this is that I am going to have to use Mirror Move against the rival. So here's your proof of how this works. On the left hand side, you can see the internal data for my Ditto in the party structure. You will notice that when I transform into Fearow, none of this data changes except the PP in slot 1. However, then if I use Mirror Move, you will notice that the PP in slot number 4 increments by 1. This is what causes the glitch. If I then exit the battle, set transforms PP to 0, and I fight a wild Pokemon, you will see that Ditto can no longer use Struggle during battle. In this second playthrough, I am going to fight the rival with the transform strategy, so that means I will increment PP in my 4th slot. So the question is, can I fix this glitch? Is there a way for me to get Ditto using Struggle again? And the answer is yes. If I explore this patch of grass, I can run into Spearow. These wild Spearow know Mirror Move. I can transform into them, use Mirror Move, and increment the PP in slot 4 even more. Once it hits 63, it is going to roll over. This is because of how the game stores PP ups. The data for them is contained within the same byte as the PP for each individual move. The upper 2 bits are used to store PP ups. That's why you can only use 3 on them. 2 bits can hold an integer between 0 and 3. And 6 bits, which is the lower part of that byte can hold an integer between 0 and 63. So once I use mirror move for the 64th time, the PP rolls over. You will notice that move 4 PP up increments by 1, and then my PP in slot 4 is reset to 0. I have now successfully removed this glitch from Ditto. When I fight Pokemon with 0 PP and transform, I can now use struggle again. I absolutely love Generation 1. This game is so cool. I can't believe that there are little nuances like this. I have had to explain so many weird mechanics in this Ditto video. It has truly been a joy for me. I hope all of you are having just as much fun. By the way, just for illustration purposes, please don't look at the fact that my Ditto has cut and go like, how did that happen? I altered a bunch of stuff in the data structure just so that I could make this example happen easily. Anyways, this level 2 Venomoth, it has metronome. If I use metronome, you can see that metronome increases the PP in whatever slot that metronome is in. The annoying thing about realizing this is that if mirror move was in slot number 1 on any of these flying type Pokemon, well, then we would have no glitch because Ditto would just increment the PP of transform. In the first playthrough, I beat Jesse and James at the top of Pokemon Tower on my first attempt. This was really lucky. Fighting them this time, I have a disgusting number of resets. Meowth is just not getting the job done here. I went into the battle with 33 and I come out with 60. However, please do look at my rival 4-split. I am 81 minutes and 3 seconds faster. You can see that my overlay isn't even coded to deal with differences in time that are this big. Let's talk about how to efficiently get rid of the struggle glitch. In Fuchsia City, I can heal in the Pokemon Center and then journey to the east fighting this trainer. He leads with a Spearow that knows mirror move in slot number 4. I transform into it, use mirror move 5 times, and then I try to knock out as many of his Pokemon as I can for experience. After that, I am going to black out to either his Fearow or his Spearow. I simply repeat this process until my PP rolls over. Now that I have struggle back, I can go to Sylph and fight a bunch of trainers, leveling Ditto up. I also have to mix in some less efficient areas like Route 15 in order to pull this off, but eventually once I get to level 50, I have a vastly more efficient way to train. Did any of you figure out what it is? I can heal in Saffron City, and then I can go into Sylph battling the rival over and over again. His team is Sandslash, Magneton, Ninetales, Kadabra, and Vaporeon. By losing during the lab battle, he no longer has Cloyster in slot number 2, so I can fight him at a low level, transforming into Sandslash without having to fear the water type. And for the purpose of blackout training, Vaporeon is a far better water type. It comes at the end of the fight after I have soaked up experience from Sandslash, Magneton, Ninetales, and Kadabra, 4 Pokemon that have trainer boosted yields. And then the Vaporeon sees that Water Gun and Aurora Beam are super effective against Sandslash, so it is never going to waste turns with moves like Sand Attack or Bite. And I can use Poison Sting against it to chip away doing absolutely nothing, and as a result, I can lose to the Vaporeon as many times as I want. My goal here is to continue this training from level 50 until 86. It is so much faster than grinding against Diglett, it is so much faster than blacking out to Koga, it is so much better than blacking out to the biker boss. This is the way to play the mid-game in Pokemon Yellow when using Ditto. Now this training isn't as efficient as it could be right now. You'll notice that with Slash, I have to two-shot the Sandslash, the Magneton, and the Ninetales, which is really annoying. This is the reason that I fought other trainers until level 50. The rival just isn't efficient until that threshold. At level 53, things do get better, and once I reach 60, things are really moving. Slash 2 hits Sandslash, 1 hits Magneton, sometimes 1 hits Ninetales, in this case it doesn't. Of course I'm going to one-shot the Kadabra. Now I can also do it with Swift, which wasn't previously the case. After blacking out between each one of these battles, I am getting on the bike to save as much time in the overworld, moving back to Sylph. I have had so much practice doing this now that my motion here is fairly efficient. You're always going to see little mistakes, after all we have slowed this footage down for you in post. I am playing this twice as fast as you're viewing right now. Okay, so we're going to jump ahead. I have trained against the rival now for almost an hour. I was getting so tired at this point, and I made a misclick. I accidentally selected Slash when the Vaporeon came out, and I knocked it out. Do you know why this is a really bad mistake? Because during all of this blackout training, I have not been saving the game. If I reset now, I will go back to level 50. I tried to play the run out from here. That means going into the Lorelei battle at level 95 instead of level 100 or 99. I'll talk about the 99 scenario in just one moment. And then at level 95, I got stuck against Agatha. I defeated Bruno at 4 hours, 2 minutes, and 42 seconds. Just for reference, that is only 4 seconds difference different from Avra's time. But then Agatha totally destroyed my self-esteem. I fought her for an hour and a half. The clock ticked over 5 hours. I continued trying late into the night, and I could not defeat Agatha. Eventually, I got so angry, decided to stop, and I figured that there would be no second playthrough for this Ditto video. I went to sleep absolutely miserable, and I woke up the next morning, sat down, and played Ditto for a third time. During this run, I am pulling out all the stops for safety. I want to get to Agatha and defeat her this time, because I know that even though Ditto is not going to beat Avra's time, it is still going to be able to get a much better follow-up result, and it really deserves that. You can see my save play exemplified by my Brock split. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. Mount Moon is where I make my first major change for safety. I battle pretty much every single optional trainer in here, leveling up more. This makes the 2 mandatory battles at the end of the cave so much easier. I defeat Jesse and James this time with 0 resets. Also, I'm now level 23 over a damage rounding threshold before fighting the rival in Cerulean City. This makes the training against him more efficient, and it also makes my chance to win much higher. I do think there are ways for Ditto to go faster in this section of the game, but for me at least, it is not worth it for peace of mind. This feels like the correct and smooth strategy. And by the time I defeat Misty, my run is actually way ahead of my previous result. I now have a lead over my first playthrough of 17 minutes and 19 seconds. That's down from 14 minutes and 41 seconds in the prior run. Now around the SSN, I fight literally everyone. I so rarely come out to the front of the boat here and fight this trainer, but I need as much experience as possible in this section of the run. Red Ryosi, when using the HP up, was able to pull off a strategy fighting the rival starting at level 33, leveling up resetting badge boosts at level 34, getting just enough health to defeat all of his Pokemon using Struggle. This requires the rival to deal 0 HP and damage though. I decided to go for a different strategy. That is leveling up to 34, almost 35, and then just fighting the rival with Transform. I end up taking some resets here, but it's not a major delay on my playthrough. Also, fighting Surge with Transform is really fun. And hey, Ditto wins without a reset. Now, an error in my second playthrough that I didn't point out to you was the fact that during the wrapping lass, I realized I didn't have enough health because I hadn't leveled enough fighting the rival at level 31 with Transform. So the extra training against the rival facilitates an easier wrapping lass, which I think is very good. In the previous playthrough, I just used rare candies here, which I don't think is the correct choice. I want to save those for the late game. Rival 4 with Transform at level 39, leveling to 40. By the way, if your stats get altered by the Furo, then you won't get the badge boost back even though you level up. That's why my stats aren't changing here. Last time Jesse and James thrashed me at the top of the tower, and this time I defeat them with only 3 resets. Okay, Ditto, let's go. We've got this. This is the run. Agatha, please just go away for now. I don't want to think about you. I know that this could all still fall apart. Spam mirror move. I'm just going to mention one additional fact here. Remember when I said that it is important that Transform can be used on a Pokemon that has already used Transform? Yeah, with mirror move against these Spearow, you can just go back and forth using Transform over and over again, transforming into Spearow. Every time Transform executes this way, it restores the PP of mirror move, so it is possible, at least in theory, to infinitely spam mirror move against a single Pokemon, overflowing the PP and getting Struggle back. Okay, back to the mid-game strategy. Level to 51. Use 2 rare candies to get to level 53. This makes Rival 5 Blackout training more efficient. Fight him for a truly disgusting amount of time. And that's the mid-game for Ditto. It's actually really simple. After you know how all of these weird glitches work and which trainers to fight and exactly where to Blackout, it's actually not simple. It's pretty complex. Okay, let's talk about some alternatives here while I grind against him. Number 1, it is possible to defeat him at a much lower level, use rare candies, and then go into the Elite Four at a significantly lower level. But what we're then hoping for is an absolutely outrageously lucky Agatha. We could 2-shot the Gengar with Lick, somehow make it by the Golbat using only Confuse Ray and Mega Drain. Say Confuse Ray always inflicts damage and Mega Drain always gets a critical hit. Ditto could then critical hit the Haunter, the final Gengar could come in, and we could score 1 non-crit as well as 1 crit for the knockout. This is the kind of luck that I personally consider to be inhuman. I always say astronomical odds, but people then say that astronomical distances are very large distances, so I mean astronomically small odds. I want the highest possible odds that I can get against Agatha, and the simplest way to do that is facing her at level 100. Red Ryosi defeated the rival slightly earlier than I did, around level 84, leveling to 85 during the fight. I fought him all the way up until level 86, and defeated him just before level 87. By the way, the higher level for Giovanni does not make him completely trivial, but it does make him easier. Struggle for Sabrina, then face Koga. At level 87, my Ditto has 253 HP. It needs 246 to win against Koga. What this means is that Venomoth health can't use Psychic. If it doesn't, Ditto should win. It's a close fight. I do have one reset against Koga, but I pull through on my second attempt, winning with 8 hit points. Blame can be fought with either Struggle or Transform. Struggle is not as good at lower levels, which is why it was the wrong choice during my first run, but in this case when I'm over leveled, Struggle is more than enough. Starting at Giovanni, we are going to use Transform for all of the remaining battles. I come out of this split 115 minutes and 10 seconds faster. That is not 1 hour and 15 minutes, that is 115 minutes. And I improve my time even more on Rival 6. I am now nearly 119 minutes ahead. This is roughly 2 hours of time, so right now it looks like Ditto is on track to beat the game with roughly a 5-hour time. That is if Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, Lance, and the champion cooperate. During Victory Road, I have one last detail to point out to you. Right now I have 10 rare candies. If I use them and go from 89 to 99, then I can level up during the Elite 4. This will re-establish badge boosts during one battle for me. I talked with Redriosi about this, and for him he said it's most impactful against Bruno, but you can also use it against Lorelei or Agatha. The problem is with Agatha, we're critical hitting most of her Pokemon, so we probably just want to be level 100 by the time we fight her anyway. I made a really boneheaded choice here, used all my rare candies, and then didn't grind for more experience. So I am not going to level up before Agatha. I will not have the damage rounding threshold at level 100 for that battle, and I am also not going to get badge boosts during Lorelei or Bruno. Plus, this mistake is going to have far-reaching implications even against Lance. Okay, quickly summarizing the optimal strategy against Lorelei. Takedown, crit the Dugong. Bubble Beam, Cloyster, crit it with a second Bubble Beam, knocking out, then crit the Slowbro, hopefully knocking it out as fast as possible. Don't use Rest here, it's not worth it. For Jinx, deplete all of the PP in every move with the exception of 1 PP in Rest, and as many uses of Aurora Beam as can be saved. Then for Lapras, spam Aurora Beam, hope for an attack drop so that Body Slam stops doing so much damage. Use Rest, heal to full, and knock it out with Struggle. Coming out of this battle, I actually got full body chills. I am now 153 minutes ahead. That is 2.55 hours. Maybe the sub 4 hour time is possible, provided the next 2 battles are fast. Bruno is by far the least on rails of all of the trainers during the Elite Four. A lot can go wrong here for both me and for him. He can just spam Thunder Punch and lose Pokemon. He can spam Double Team and then I can miss absolutely all of my attacks. He can get crits with High Jump Kick. I can get crits with Dig. Eventually though, Ditto Onix is going to beat him. I think the key strategical insight here is don't use Dig against the Hitmonchan. You really need it for both Onix, the Hitmonlee, and the Machamp. I once again gain time coming out of this split. I am now 164 minutes ahead, 2.73 hours. Okay, Agatha, please do not ruin this for me. If the first Gengar goes for Substitute, reset immediately because it's going to take 2 licks. If it doesn't go for Substitute and Ditto fails to crit, reset immediately. It's going to take 2 licks. The only fight that I'm going to play out here is the one where she switches to Golbat right away, in which case I'll try to knock that Pokemon out and then crit the Gengar, or the fight where I crit the Gengar right away. Playing this way makes the resets come quickly. Number 50 goes by, number 55 goes by, number 60, number 65, and it was at this point that I started to lose hope. The time is slipping through my fingers. The 4-hour mark is rapidly approaching. This did not feel nice. I crit the Gengar, knock it out, but the Golbat's just gonna feel hopeless. It hits itself right away. I set up Substitute, it doesn't hit itself. Yeah, I should have figured it just snapped out. I use Confuse Ray again, it starts hitting itself. I go for Mega Drain. Typically I'm using about 3 of these on the Golbat. That's the ideal scenario, I think. I go for my third, Golbat snaps out of confusion. Of course it does. I confuse it again, it takes itself down to red health. I was so worried that she was going to use a super potion here. I try Lick. I wasn't convinced that my damage range would be enough, and I was right, it's not. The Golbat survives. It hits itself. It goes down. Okay, this is pretty good. Haunter is next. I have 3 uses of Lick left over, which is exactly what I need. And then I crit the Ghost. Okay, chills. I have 2 uses of Lick left over for the final Gengar. This improves my chances significantly. I also have Confuse Ray and 2 uses of Mega Drain, as well as 3 substitutes for the Arbok. Turn 1, Confuse Ray so it damages itself. And it does. Mega Drain then, it's doing chip damage unless it crits. Arbok hits itself again, goes down to red health. I have 1 use of Mega Drain left over. I go for it. It doesn't do enough, but Arbok hits itself. I knocked out the Arbok before the final Gengar. This is the first time that this ever happened to me. So I have moved on to the final Gengar with 2 uses of Lick. Please, I need 1 critical hit. Just 1 critical hit. I go for Lick and it doesn't crit. Okay, please, second Lick, you have to get a critical hit. And it does. Gengar goes down, and I defeat Agatha. I now have a time lead of 183 minutes. That is 3.05 hours. But I finished the first run with 7 hours and 5 minutes, so still I'm not quite on track for a sub 4 hour time. Okay, let's talk about my mistake. I messed up my experience going into the Elite Four starting at level 99. I needed more experience. Then I could level up in the middle of the Agatha fight, and I wouldn't level up after Lance's Gyarados. Because of this, I reset badge boosts from Leer. At first, I thought this was a really bad thing. I'm resetting badge boosts. I'm not going to be able to outspeed the Dragonite. But then I realized I am reapplying badge boosts by leveling up here. So I am still faster than the Dragonite. Okay, it wasn't actually a mistake. Everything is still on track. I just need the Dragonite to miss with Thunder. If it does, I can hit with Dragon Rage on turn 1, follow up with Hyper Beam, and knock it out. Unless it survives with the sliver of health because I roll bad damage. Okay, not great. It misses with another Thunder though. I use Hyper Beam again. I forgot to use Dragon Rage. Then it hits with Thunder and Gyarados goes down. Okay, I'm losing time here. And Lance continued to get lucky, beating me over and over and over. This started to get really frustrating. I am now within 10 minutes of the 4 hour time, and I continued to lose to Lance until eventually the Dragonite did not knock out Ditto. I survive with 44 hit points, use Hyper Beam, and Dragonite goes down. I am in a 189 minute lead. That's 3.15 hours. I am now on track for a sub 4 hour time with Ditto, provided that the champion cooperates. And he doesn't. He is so bad. I get hit by Kinesis in the first battle. I tried to play things out. This was a mistake. Eventually I reset. One consequence of saving all the time in the mid game is that now the final Pokemon is Vaporeon, which is more difficult for Sandslash to knock out. It has both Aurora Beam and Hydro Pump, and if it chooses one of these moves, it's most likely going to win. Also, Vaporeon has ridiculous health, so I have to two-shot even with critical hits from Slash. What I'm looking for here is Vaporeon using Mist, which it isn't doing, and every time I lose to the Vaporeon, I sacrifice so much time. It didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice, it happened 3 times, and with this loss, the clock is at 3 hours and 58 minutes. Only 2 more to go before I lose my sub 4 hour time. I make it back to the Vaporeon. This time the champion uses one of his incredibly rare full restores here to heal it. That means I don't have enough Slash to use the move twice. Luckily, I do have 1 more PP of Earthquake, and I can go for this. Vaporeon uses Aurora Beam. Sandslash survives because Vaporeon got a critical hit. I go for Earthquake, and Vaporeon faints. With Ditto, I get a time of 3 hours, 58 minutes, and 44 seconds. With 84 resets, 152 blackouts, I finish the game at level 100 with a game time of 13 hours and 10 minutes. Today, we have witnessed a historic upset. Ditto, the Pokemon that we all thought was going to be worse, has achieved a time that is better than Abra. The margin for this victory is incredibly small though, only 4 minutes separate these 2 playthroughs. It is important for me to acknowledge here that with Abra, I only did a single run. If you want the fairest possible comparison using my results, which isn't really that fair, I'll explain why in 1 second, then we need to compare their first runs, in which case Ditto is significantly slower than Abra. But I don't think this is even a really fair comparison because I played Abra so long ago. If I was able to sit down and do a first run with it today, I'm sure that I would get a much better result than 4 hours. And that's the thing about this tier list. I have had to accept that it is a living and breathing thing. Sometimes Pokemon are ranked unfairly because I make mistakes. Sometimes Pokemon get ridiculously good results because I get lucky. Ditto got lucky to some extent in this follow-up run. It beat Agatha without spending ridiculous amounts of time against her, and that is certainly a possibility whenever you sit down to play Ditto. So acknowledging these facts, right now Ditto is going to be ranked ahead of Abra in my tier list. And so concludes the penultimate video of this series. From here on out, I only have 1 more Pokemon to play with. It's Mewtwo. I think that all of us throughout this entire process have known that Mewtwo is going to be the best Pokemon, but recently Mew came along with the Mew race and it got an outrageous time. I have seen murmurs in the community of people that are doubting Mewtwo now, thinking that maybe it is only going to get 2nd place. Is it possible that the slow growth rate truly holds back the legendary Pokemon that much, and the medium slow growth rate, despite the normal type moves at the beginning, give Mew the advantage that it needs to win? Well, we're gonna have to find out next week. Since this video is already so long, I'm just gonna make it a little bit longer. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me during this journey. It has been so much fun to play Pokemon Yellow this in depth. For me, hitting this milestone feels quite bittersweet. I'm sad to leave this tier list behind, but I also feel a great sense of accomplishment for having completed this over what is now half a decade. Right now there exists a video on my channel featuring every single one of these Pokemon in a solo video, with the exception of Caterpie, Kakuna, and Metapod, which can't beat the game, and Mewtwo, which will be out within a week. But those feelings aside, I think the thing that I am most prominently feeling is a sense of relief and excitement. In the last 6 months, playing Pokemon Yellow has truly become difficult for me. I am very burnt out on this series. I wish there was another game with another Pokedex just as fresh as Generation 1 that I could dive into and complete a series like this in. But I know that recapturing the magic of Generation 1 is basically impossible, and I have no illusions about that. A finite end to this series is going to give me a chance to use TM44. It also gives other people a chance to pick up where I have left off with Yellow version and hopefully continue educating the community on just how far each one of these Pokemon can be pushed. There are so many feelings for me. I'm really proud of the work that I have done here. I'm really proud of the overlay that I built and everything that I contributed to the community. I am incredibly grateful for having been given this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You are all so incredible for having accepted me. Now, this isn't the end. There is still one more episode. I'll see you next time when I play Mewtwo in Pokemon Yellow.